Hello, crime enthusiasts. Are you ready for another chilling investigation? The case of Karen Leylen Oviedo. Rolando Angel Aquino was born in 1987 in Bolivia and later moved to Guaymalan, Argentina. He is the oldest of 7 siblings and started working at the age of 14 to support his parents. In his youth, Rolando met Carolina Chavez, and in 2007, they had a son together. They eventually separated. Later, he entered a relationship with Maria Soledad Guardia, with whom he had another son, Elias. Despite their breakup, Rolando remained involved in his children's lives. Elias cherished his father and enjoyed spending time with him, even after his parents parted ways. Meanwhile, Rolando maintained relationships with his ex-wives and always prioritized his sons, ensuring that he remained in contact despite not living with them. Eventually, Rolando started a relationship with Karen Leylen Oviedo. Karen is an outgoing and friendly woman, born on March 30, 1990. In 2016, they moved in together and started their own business. Besides running a business with Karen, Rolando also worked at a market that specialized in wholesale fruit sales. To the neighbors, Rolando and Karen appeared loving and happy. However, it was clear that Karen was the dominant figure in their relationship. Someone once shared that Rolando had caught her in a car with her lover and reacted violently, almost destroying the vehicle. Despite this incident, things eventually calmed down, and he forgave her. Based on their social media photos, the two seemed to share genuine affection and enjoyed being together. Before meeting Rolando, Karen already had 2 daughters. One of the fathers of her daughters is Raul Ojeda, whom she married in 2013. After a while, Raul left his family. He was originally the owner of a successful shoe store, earning a good income, while Karen worked at a clothing boutique. Over time, the family encountered financial difficulties, which made the atmosphere unbearable. Feeling threatened, he made the decision to leave. Pretending he needed to buy something, he secretly fled the city, traveled to another country, and intentionally changed buses multiple times until arriving in Paraguay. He made sure his movements were untraceable to the residents of Noto. Elias, the youngest son of Ronaldo and his ex-wife, frequently visits his father. They made it a point to spend the 2019 holidays together, which Elias greatly enjoyed. However, according to Karen, Elias was somewhat distant in his interactions with her and her family. In the summer of 2019, Elias went to see Rolando and Karen again. At that time, the boy, who was 9 years old, was excited to turn all the plans he had discussed with his father into reality. On the morning of July 12, 2019, before heading to work, Rolando checked on Elias in his room to wish him good morning. He immediately noticed the boy was unwell and decided to take him to a children's hospital. After doctors examined Elias, it became clear that his condition was critical and required urgent care in the intensive care unit. Despite the doctor's efforts, young Elias passed away after hours in a coma. Relatives revealed that Elias had left home without showing any unusual symptoms and arrived at his father's house appearing healthy. However, the medical report stated that he succumbed to third-degree poisoning, which led to multiple organ failure and cerebral thrombosis. Since his medical records showed he was a healthy boy, doctors requested an additional forensic examination. Nevertheless, Elias's mother and grandmother refused the procedure, considering it too harsh for the deceased. Karen suggested cremation but then decided against it. She chose to bury Elias in a private cemetery, where she could visit and leave flowers. Rolando, devastated by his son's death, gradually healed as time went by. 16 months after the tragedy, he proposed to Karen, and the two married. Unfortunately, their happiness was short-lived. On February 7, 2022, 35-year-old Rolando suddenly fell ill. He experienced severe vomiting before losing consciousness in his living room. Emergency services were called immediately. Karen opened the door to let the medical team in, and they found Rolando still lying on the floor. After regaining consciousness, Rolando was transported to the Santa Maria Clinic via ambulance, although another account suggests Karen herself drove him to the hospital. Despite the doctor's best efforts to save Rolando, He did not survive and passed away on February 9th. The cause of death was determined to be severe poisoning. His sudden and unexpected death brought up many questions. Given that Rolando was healthy and regularly participated in sports, the medical staff interviewed his wife to gather more information. When asked if Rolando was taking any medications, Karen replied that he was. She said that her husband had been taking a medication to lighten dark spots on his skin. However, this information causes experts to be skeptical. Test results showed abnormally high levels of oxalate and calcium crystals in Rolando's body, which are classic signs of ethylene glycol poisoning, a key ingredient commonly found in car antifreeze. Given the unusual circumstances of Rolando's death and concerns raised by his family, authorities stepped in to investigate further. They ordered various forensic tests and interrogated Karen, who provided conflicting statements during questioning. As a result, she was detained for the investigation, and her phone was confiscated. Rolando's death deeply affected those close to him, including his friends and teammates. The news also shocked others in the community, including visitors to the warehouse, Raul, and local residents. People found it difficult to understand how a seemingly healthy man could pass away so suddenly and unexpectedly. Raul, Karen's ex-husband, was shocked when rumors began circulating about deliberate poisoning. He described Karen as affectionate and nonviolent during their marriage. Investigators questioned Karen about the substance she gave Rolando, and she claimed it was a remedy for skin spots, administered with a dropper. When asked to provide the bottle, Karen stated that their housekeeper had already discarded it. However, the housekeeper, Claudia Cortez, contradicted Karen, asserting she hadn't disposed of the bottle. Claudia also mentioned overhearing a conversation where Rolando told Karen he disliked what she was giving him. The prosecutor's office initiated an investigation to gather information in Karen's household neighborhood. Neighbors reported seeing Karen repeatedly administering medications to her husband. Doubts were raised about the circumstances surrounding Rolando, prompting investigators to consider that Karen may have intended only to temporarily sedate her husband, rather than harm him. However, the Department for Technological Crimes dismissed this theory based on their findings. After examining Karen's phone, investigators discovered that she had searched for queries such as "what is the deadliest poison?" and "how to delete search history." Furthermore, evidence revealed that she had ordered ethylene glycol from an online store twice in the days leading up to her husband's death. According to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention's Agency for Toxic Substances, ethylene glycol is a synthetic liquid that absorbs water and is commonly used in the production of antifreeze. It is odorless, has a sweet taste, and is highly toxic to humans. Based on preliminary findings from the forensic examination conducted by the Supreme Court, investigators charged Karen with intentionally poisoning Rolando by diluting a toxic substance with orange juice. Consuming the drink caused Rolando to suffer severe poisoning over the weekend of February 5th and 6th, leading to a rapid decline in his health. He was admitted to the emergency room on Monday and subsequently passed away. By mid-February, authorities compiled sufficient evidence against Karen, and on February 16th, she was formally charged with aggravated murder. Rolando's death and the subsequent investigation raised suspicions about the circumstances surrounding the death of 9-year-old Elias. Authorities launched a new inquiry into Karen's potential involvement in the boy's death. Upon reviewing Elias's medical history, the prosecutor's office noted that Karen claimed he was healthy and energetic, but during a stay at his father's home, the child suddenly fell into a coma from which he never recovered. The death certificate stated that Elias died due to internal organ failure and brain thrombosis. However, investigators questioned whether such causes were plausible for a healthy child of his age. The prosecutor's office uncovered evidence linking Karen to the purchase of ethylene glycol. Store records confirmed that she purchased the substance on July 2, 2019, shortly before Elias moved into her household. Furthermore, Elias's relatives revealed that Karen had strongly advocated for cremating the boy's remains, despite his biological mother opposing the idea and choosing burial instead. Based on the accumulated evidence, prosecutor Claudia Rios charged Karen with aggravated murder on March 4, alleging that she had poisoned Elias. On March 14, the court approved a pretrial detention order for Karen. Although she appealed the decision, the judge upheld the ruling, requiring her to remain in custody until the trial. The trial commenced on Monday, November 28, 2022, at the criminal court in Mendoza, nearly 10 months after the alleged incident. The case focused on Karen and two separate charges: the murder of Elias and the murder of Rolando. Prosecutor Gustavo Fellman handled the first charge, while prosecutor Claudia Rios managed the second. Javier Aquino, Rolando's eldest son and 15 years old at the time, acted as the plaintiff, supported by legal representation. In their opening statements, the prosecution argued that Karen had murdered Elias and later Rolando by giving them orange juice mixed with ethylene glycol. This toxic substance caused severe poisoning, ultimately leading to multiple organ failure. Karen's defense, however, challenged the prosecution's allegations, contending that there was no direct evidence linking her to the crimes. The defense attorney also highlighted that Karen lacked a clear motive for the murders, as she had already secured ownership of the house, 2 cars, and the family business. Additionally, they refuted the prosecution's assertion that Karen had used her phone to make suspicious purchases or research ethylene glycol online, undermining allegations that she had previously used the poison to harm Elias. While condemning the actions that led to the deaths as deplorable, the defense reminded the court that no conviction should occur unless guilt is conclusively proven. Karen, labeled by the media as the poisoner, took the stand after the initial testimonies concluded. Following a request from her lawyer, the judge permitted her to speak. Karen firmly declared her innocence, stating that she had been falsely accused of committing a heinous crime. She expressed her distress at the idea that someone was trying to frame her as the murderer. Her lawyer emphasized to the jury that the accusations against her were baseless. Karen claimed that Rolando may have hacked into her account to purchase antifreeze. According to her testimony, when the package containing antifreeze arrived, Rolando told her not to touch it, left the house, and took the parcel with him. Karen also stated that she had a verifiable alibi. On February 6th, the day Rolando began to feel unwell, she claimed that she wasn't at home. Instead, she had gone to a beauty salon and then to the gym, returning later to find her husband already vomiting. During her statement, Karen criticized the prosecutors, accusing them of immorality for implicating her, a mother of 2 young daughters, in the murder of a child, Elias. The prosecution then requested permission to cross-examine Karen. They asked if she had suggested cremating Elias. She denied this, asserting that it was not her decision and that she had never said anything of the sort. During the trial, prosecutors introduced various witnesses, including family members of Elias. Maria, Elias's mother, testified that after her son's death, Rolando told her about Karen suggesting cremating the boy's body so that each family could keep the ashes for 1 week. However, Maria rejected this suggestion. She also told the jury that during a meeting at the cemetery, Rolando mentioned Karen's jealousy, claiming she even slept in a separate bed because of it. Carolina, who is Rolando's first wife, also testified. She confirmed that, according to Rolando, he and Karen slept in separate beds. Carolina mentioned that she had never met or spoken to Karen before. However, on the morning of February 8th, Karen called her directly to report that Rolando was ill and had been hospitalized. During the conversation, Karen mentioned that Rolando might have taken some medication that caused him to feel unwell. She also asked Carolina for help unlocking Rolando's phone, saying she suspected he might be involved with another woman. Carolina was shocked to hear about Rolando's condition, as he had appeared perfectly fine just days earlier when they met. She explained that when they arrived at the clinic, Karen went ahead to speak with the doctors, while she was asked to wait outside because she was not allowed to enter. Carolina found the situation very strange. Determined to get answers, she contacted the doctor directly and demanded to know why she hadn't been allowed to see her ex-husband. The doctor explained that Rolando had lost consciousness, had not regained it, and was unresponsive to all treatments. Carolina then went to the secretary's office to file a formal complaint. During another conversation with Karen, Carolina learned that Rolando had taken syrup for a skin condition, which had caused an allergic reaction. Karen added that the bottle was no longer in the house, as the housekeeper had thrown it away. Karen also stated that she was covering all the medical expenses and told Carolina that there was no reason for her to stay any longer. Furthermore, Karen tried to convince Carolina that Rolando had expressed a wish to be cremated, suggesting that his ex-wife should support this decision. The jury also heard testimony from doctors, police officers, and expert witnesses during the trial. Among them was pediatrician Ivana Marinelli, who treated Elias during his hospitalization in July 2019. Dr. Marinelli explained that the boy had been brought to the hospital struggling to breathe and required emergency intubation. A CT scan revealed severe cerebral thrombosis, and intensive therapy was initiated. She confirmed that Elias's symptoms, such as altered consciousness, anxiety that escalated into a coma, were consistent with ethylene glycol poisoning. After treatment, Elias's condition worsened rapidly. At approximately 5 p.m. on July 12, he suffered cardiac and respiratory arrest. The medical team attempted resuscitation for 50 minutes, with the boy's father present, but all efforts proved unsuccessful. At 6 p.m., the boy was pronounced dead. During the trial, the prosecutors presented the jury with a psychological report about Karen, based on Dr. Hayes' observations. Defense attorney Luis Torres argued that Karen had lied and concealed the truth. She painted Karen as someone who attempted to appear virtuous but was, in reality, unemotional, cruel, and uncooperative. The debate persisted while prosecutor Gustavo Fellman shared further details. Gustavo read from Karen's psychiatric report, highlighting the doctor's assessment of her relationships as being self-serving and primarily aimed at personal gain. The report also noted that Karen underwent a psychological evaluation shortly after the death of her husband, Rolando. However, she showed no signs of distress or emotional trauma over the loss. Describing Karen's personality, Gustavo stated that she was highly self-centered, concealed her negative attitudes toward others, exhibited overly controlled hostility, and harbored suppressed impulsive behaviors. There was no evidence to support Karen's claim of being a victim of gender-based violence. Before the guilty verdict was delivered, the prosecutor firmly argued to the jury that all evidence pointed to Karen having meticulously planned and carried out both murders without raising suspicion. She knowingly purchased ethylene glycol, disposed of its packaging, and disguised it as juice. After Elias and Rolando fell ill, she made no effort to help them. Instead, she attempted to destroy evidence and portrayed herself as a victim. The prosecutor submitted a list of ethylene glycol purchases made using Karen's account in connection with Rolando's murder. The prosecutors and the plaintiff urged the jury to deliver a unanimous guilty verdict, emphasizing that it was the only path to justice. They argued for Karen to be convicted of murder with aggravating circumstances. However, the defense argued that the prosecutor's office lacked solid evidence linking Karen to the deaths of Elias and Rolando. The defense attorney contended that while a person can appear virtuous and still commit a crime, it is equally possible for someone to have flaws and yet be innocent of any wrongdoing. The defense acknowledged that they could not present evidence that fully absolved Karen. Consequently, on December 1, 2022, the 12 members of the jury found Karen Laylen Oviedo guilty of murder in the death of Elias. She was also convicted of Rolando's death under aggravating circumstances, having used a treacherous method. Karen, dressed in black and wearing a white rosary around her neck, showed no emotion as the verdict was read. She was sentenced to life imprisonment. Following the verdict, the defense attorney questioned the jury's ability to make an impartial decision, arguing that they lacked legal expertise and a thorough understanding of the evidence. He also criticized the judicial process in Argentina, claiming it differs significantly from that in the United States and other developed countries with stronger legal safeguards. Despite these objections, Karen is now acknowledged as one of Argentina's most notorious criminals for poisoning Elias and Rolando. Although Karen was convicted, it does little to ease the sorrow of Rolando's and Elias's relatives. It remains unclear why Karen, a mother of two, took the lives of her loving and faithful husband and their son, who had his entire future ahead of him. Karen, the calculated poisoner, tried to evade justice. Had she succeeded in convincing authorities to cremate the bodies, she might have received a lighter sentence or even eventual release. The exact motive behind her actions has never been revealed. The families of Rolando and Elias still seek answers, but they may never find them, as Karen has never admitted guilt. Despite seemingly having a perfect life, a house, a car, financial stability, and an income higher than her husband's, she committed this shocking crime. She never took out life insurance on her husband, which makes her actions all the more perplexing. Now, she faces a life sentence behind bars. Hello again, true crime fans. We've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Ilona Flint. On December 23, 2013, 22-year-old Ilona Flint finished her shift at a shopping center store, where she often worked late during the Christmas season. This night, she left work just after midnight, expecting her boyfriend to pick her up from the parking lot. However, he did not arrive and did not respond to her messages. Concerned, she reached out to her boyfriend's brother, whom she got along with well, and asked him for a ride home. He agreed to help her, but unfortunately, they never made it home. On that fateful night, a dangerous criminal chose to practice his murderous skills by targeting the Belvedere family. This decision led to a terrible tragedy. The Belvedere family was well respected and had a reputation for being good, honest, and crime-free. Ilona had just moved to San Diego, California, where she was lively, energetic, and determined. Love had blossomed between her and Gianni Belvedere, and they had announced their engagement shortly before the tragedy. They loved each other and were eager to start a family together. Gianni's parents had become very close to Ilona. They treated her like their own daughter, and they had a wonderful relationship from the very beginning. All of this contributed to their belief in a bright future for the couple. Not even their brightest dreams could protect them from the violent criminals of 2013. A shooting broke out in the parking lot of the Minville Shopping Center in San Diego. One of the store employees noticed a suspicious person and called the police. Before that, Ilona Flint frantically dialed 911, telling the dispatcher that a stranger was threatening her. The driver of the car she was in was her boyfriend's 2-year-old brother, Salvatore Belvedere. Suddenly, the call with Ilona was interrupted. The dispatcher sent patrol officers to the area to investigate. In just a few minutes, the patrol arrived at the incident scene. Inside the car, they found Ilona and Salvatore unconscious. Ilona was slumped in the front passenger seat, and police identified 2 gunshot wounds on her body, one in her chest and another in the back of her head, which was fatal. Despite brief tries to revive her, it became evident that Ilona would not wake up. Doctors later confirmed her death, noting that the assailant had shot both her and the driver while Ilona was on the phone. During the call with the dispatcher, no background noise or gunshots were heard. Police reviewed the call recording and interviewed the witness who reported the incident. She also did not hear any loud noises. As a result, police believe the attacker used a pistol with a silencer. The investigation confirmed that the assassin had a .22 caliber pistol. The boy, Salvatore, was in critical condition after being shot in the face, right between the eyes. When police arrived, he was still alive and was rushed to the hospital. Despite the doctor's efforts to save him, he fell into a coma and died 2 days later. This left the police without any valuable information from him. Forensic experts started by examining the vehicle where the Ilona and Salvatore were shot. Sadly, they found no evidence of a third person either inside or outside the car. They discovered that the vehicle in which Ilona and Salvatore were found belonged to Leonardo Belvedere, Salvatore's father. Police intended to inform the car owner about the tragic incident and also wanted to speak with Gianni, Ilona's new fiancé. However, they could not find Gianni at his home. Leonardo went to the shopping mall where the incident occurred and waited for news of Gianni. Leonardo was the first to notice that something was wrong. Gianni usually arrived at the mall early and waited for Ilona in the parking lot, so his absence caused concern. Leonardo tried to call him, but Gianni did not answer any calls or messages, which was completely unlike him. This unusual behavior prompted Leonardo to go looking for his son. The police issued a notice for Gianni in his green Toyota Camry. There was suspicion that Gianni was involved in the murder of Ilona and her brother Salvatore, possibly due to a conflict between young people that led to the tragedy. The search for Gianni in his car began throughout the city, as the police had a number of questions for him. They needed to determine if his girlfriend Ilona had any disputes with anyone that could have endangered her life. And they also needed to confirm his alibi. To get those answers, the police had to speak directly with Gianni. The first clue had emerged. Police had received information from dispatchers that could lead to a suspect. Police learned that shortly after Ilona contacted emergency services, a mall employee had called to report seeing a suspicious vehicle with an unknown man standing next to it. The man, who appeared to be of average height, was standing behind the driver's side window of the one vehicle. Although the witness did not hear any gunshots, screams, or signs of a struggle, she found the man's behavior unusual. He made some strange gestures before quickly returning to his car. Fortunately, the witness had taken a good look at the vehicle and provided police with a detailed description. The vehicle was very similar to the one Gianni had been driving when he went missing. At this point, police began to consider Ilona's fiancé, Gianni, as a prime suspect, as he was likely present at the crime scene. Police obtained surveillance footage, which further strengthened their belief in the reliability of an eyewitness account of the shooter. Based on the recordings, they created a description to help identify the suspect, a man of unknown race, of average height, wearing brown pants and a shirt with some resemblance to Gianni. This raised concerns for police, as it suggested a possible love triangle. Police speculated that Gianni had discovered Ilona and Salvatore's affair. It is believed that Gianni may have encountered them in the parking lot of a shopping mall. In a fit of rage, he is believed to have shot both of them with a pistol equipped with a silencer before fleeing the scene. While this scenario is common in love triangles, it remains a theory that needs to be confirmed. Friends of the couple have dismissed the police theories, insisting that Ilona had nothing to do with Salvatore. They believe that she was deeply in love with Gianni and that both young people were victims of an attack by an unknown assailant, while Gianni had nothing to do with the crime. There is even the possibility that he was kidnapped. Even with this testimony, the police still did not rule out Gianni as a suspect. The police returned to speak with Leonardo, the father of the Belvedere family. The police informed Leonardo that Gianni was considered one of the prime suspects in the case. However, for Gianni's family and friends, this was hard to believe. They could not imagine him being involved in any kind of heinous act. Gianni had always been a well-mannered and calm person. He did not associate with troublemakers. He was known for his intelligence, optimism, and ambitious plans for the future, including with his beloved Ilona. The idea that he could have resorted to violence against his own brother and fiancé seemed completely absurd. While the police searched for Gianni, his family reached out to him through the media, believing there had been a misunderstanding and that he would return home soon. Despite suspicions surrounding him, his mother and sister encouraged him to come back to clear his name. They also appealed to anyone who might have information about Gianni's whereabouts. Unfortunately, they received no significant leads. Police explored the possibility that someone else might be involved in the murders of the two young victims, yet they felt it was important to keep an eye on Gianni for any possible threats. They also looked into the involvement of organized crime, considering whether the victims might have been gang members or had connections to drug activities and deaths. However, there was no evidence linking them to illegal substances or criminal activity. Toxicology reports showed no traces of alcohol or drugs in their body, and neither had a criminal record or enemies who wanted to harm them. The crime appeared to be planned specifically targeting Ilona and Salvatore. The perpetrator acted with determination and confidence, leading police to dismiss the idea that the victims were simply random targets of a violent attack. Despite this, none of Gianni's acquaintances believed he could have carried out such a brutal crime. Nevertheless, police remained convinced that the incidents were closely tied to him and found his disappearance highly suspicious. Police decided to investigate the Gianni's mobile phone history. They found that his phone had been turned off at 11:45 p.m. on the night of the double murder and had not been turned back on since. Gianni's last call was to his cousin. The police contacted this relative to gather more information about their conversation that evening. The cousin confirmed that Gianni had called him but mentioned that nothing unusual was discussed. They casually chatted and Gianni simply mentioned he was going to the mall to pick up Ilona, as he usually did. That concluded their conversation. Ilona did not enjoy driving, despite having a driver's license, so Gianni always picked her up after work. Police were able to access Ilona's cell phone records, who was found dead in the mall parking lot. They discovered that shortly before her death, she had sent several text messages to Gianni, but he had ignored them. Ilona attempted to contact him after 2:45 p.m. but no one answered. She then called Gianni's brother Salvatore, asking him to pick her up from the parking lot. Salvatore agreed and drove to her location. It was revealed that they had been in a car in the parking lot from midnight to 1 a.m. Ilona was very worried about Gianni, prompting her to call friends, acquaintances, the local hospital, and the morgue to find him. This behavior was unusual for her, suggesting that she was increasingly worried that he might have had an accident on the way to the mall. On January 17, 2014, the police received an important tip in the case. A witness reported seeing a suspicious car parked near her home for an extended period. The abandoned vehicle was identified as Gianni's Toyota Camry, located in a remote area of Riverside, San Diego. The police were alarmed by a foul odor coming from the car, which piqued their interest. They quickly arrived at the scene and checked the car's license plates against their database, discovering that the plates were fake. Upon further investigation, they found out that the car belonged to the missing person, Gianni. Officers entered the car and noticed blood on the passenger seat, which was a concerning sign. While inspecting the vehicle, they also detected a strong odor of decomposition, particularly near the trunk. The police recognized this smell, indicating that a body was nearby. Unfortunately, they discovered the body of a person, believed to be Gianni, in an advanced state of decomposition. Due to the hot weather, dental records were needed for identification. A forensic expert confirmed the police suspicions. It was indeed Gianni. After the identification, the victim's family was informed of the tragic news. They were devastated, as they had held on to hope that their son would be safe. The police were faced with a serious situation. Who would want to harm these young individuals? A forensic examination revealed that Gianni had been dead for approximately 3 weeks before he was discovered. A bullet was found in his skull, which was the cause of Gianni's death. Based on the position of the body and the nature of the wounds, it appeared that the shooter was on his side when the shot was fired. The bullet entered behind Gianni's left ear, causing fatal injuries. He died of blood loss. Police analyzed the bullet that killed Gianni and matched it to the bullets that killed Salvatore and Ilona. Ballistics tests confirmed that all the bullets were fired from the same type of weapon. It is possible that all the victims were killed by the same person. Could it have been an accident? A deliberate crime resulted in the deaths of the young people. But the theory of a love triangle was eventually ruled out. The police decided to start their investigation from scratch. In the trunk of Gianni's car, forensic experts discovered several empty air freshener cans. These had been left behind by the attacker after repinning the buttons. This may have been an attempt to hide the smell of decomposition from the car for as long as possible. Although experts were unable to collect DNA samples from the suspect to identify the killer, they noted that the buttons on the air freshener cans had been secured with pieces of tape. After a thorough examination, the police discovered tiny traces of DNA on one of the tapes, hoping to gather clues about the mysterious killer. They entered this information into a database, but unfortunately, there were no matches. This suggests that the killer likely does not have a criminal record. However, this process was still valuable, as the system would automatically notify them if a matching DNA sample was ever added to the database. Despite this setback with the DNA, the case took a new turn soon after. Less than a day after Gianni's body was found, on January 18th, another incident occurred that initially appeared unrelated. During the investigation of the triple murder, police officers uncovered important clues. About an hour's drive from San Diego, security officers in San Clemente stopped a man at a checkpoint. He appeared nervous and suspicious during the inspection of his car, which revealed a large cache of weapons in the trunk. This included an AR-15 assault rifle, hundreds of rounds of ammunition, a .45 caliber pistol, and a .22 caliber pistol equipped with a rifled barrel and a homemade silencer. The man, heavily armed, was identified as Carlo Mercado, who was 29 years old at the time of his arrest. The police database indicated that Carlo legally owned 2 firearms. He did not have any previous convictions, and he was not listed as a potential threat in law enforcement records. As a result, he was released immediately, and his guns were confiscated. However, officers later discovered he also had an illegal pistol of that caliber. Given the presence of a homemade silencer, this illegal pistol might have been the weapon used in the triple murder. The police spent 4 months collecting evidence and preparing charges while waiting for the investigation to conclude. Special agents took charge of examining the confiscated weapons, focusing on the illegal distribution of firearms. Carlo had already admitted guilt for the illegal use of weapons after police offered him a plea deal. This deal was essential for them to formally request DNA samples from the Carlo. Once he agreed, the samples were collected and checked against the police database. This led to a match with DNA taken from the Scotch tape found in Gianni's car, which had previously been uploaded to the database. A ballistic examination of Carlo's pistol confirmed that it was the weapon used to shoot all 3 young victims. To further establish his connection to the crime, police analyzed geolocation data from Carlo's mobile phone. This analysis showed that he was near the shopping center at the time of the shooting. His motorcycle had broken down, which made it difficult for the police to find him initially, as he did not appear in most of the security camera footage. However, some footage did capture the motorcycle he used to get to the parking lot, where he was seen standing next to it. When Carlo spotted Gianni's car while he was waiting for her Alona, Carlo saw it as a perfect chance to steal a vehicle. He attempted to threaten Gianni into handing over the car keys, but Gianni fought back. Gianni was unaware of Carlo's dangerous obsession with weapons. He fancied himself a killer and had long fantasized about using a gun. The police later discovered evidence of this obsession during their investigation. Carlo frequently searched the internet for information about weapons, often focusing on gun-related murders, including mass school shootings. His bizarre fantasies prompted him to act. He approached Gianni's car and, in one swift motion, pulled out a .22 caliber pistol. He shot Gianni at close range, then climbed into the car and pushed him into the passenger seat. Excited by the act of acting out his violent fantasy, he drove around the parking lot in Gianni's car before leaving the scene of the crime. Carlo drove to the nearest gas station, as confirmed by the geolocation on his phone. He then decided to go back to get his motorbike, which he had left in a parking lot. On the way back, he crashed into a car carrying Salvatore and Alona. They recognized it as Gianni's car, and Ilona was excited to see her lover's car. She signaled Salvatore to come closer, but this turned out to be a grave mistake. When she realized that the driver was not her boyfriend, it was too late. Ilona panicked and tried to call emergency services, but was unable to finish the call because a bullet had hit her car. Carlo shot Ilona and Salvatore, the brother of the first victim. After killing them, he drove to a gas station and filled up Gianni's car, while the owner was still inside, having bled to death from a gunshot wound. The next morning, Carlo began looking into a murder that had occurred on Christmas Eve. Police later discovered Carlo's fingerprints on the gas cap of Gianni's car. Their efforts to collect and analyze evidence paid off. As a result, in April 2014, Carlo Mercado was arrested and charged with 3 counts of murder. Initially, Carlo maintained his innocence. He denied using a weapon against the victims, arguing that he did not know them and had no involvement in the murders. However, the prosecution continued to analyze the evidence, building a case that would ensure the criminal would be imprisoned for life. In June 2014, the trial began, with the prosecution arguing that the attack stemmed from a desire to steal Gianni's car. The prosecution claimed that Gianni had gone to the mall to meet Ilona and was waiting for her in the parking lot. While there, Gianni confronted Carlo, who had also come to the mall. In a fit of rage, Carlo used an unregistered pistol equipped with a silencer. After firing the shots, he fled in Gianni's car. Security cameras recorded the incident and Carlo realized that the police would be looking for the car. To avoid arrest, he changed the car's original license plate to a fake one, filled it with gas, and then returned to the mall to retrieve his motorcycle. Carlo returned to retrieve the motorcycle because he believed it might attract the attention of the police. At that time, Ilona and Salvatore saw Gianni's car while they were trying to find out what happened to Ilona's boyfriend. Instead of running away, Carlo chose to eliminate all witnesses. He used a pistol with a silencer to kill Ilona and Salvatore. The prosecutor's office believed that Carlo saw himself as a professional killer who could escape justice after killing 3 young people. This mindset persisted until the next trial, but just before that date in late July 2016, Carlo admitted his guilt and revealed many details about the crime. He admitted to using air freshener to cover up the smell of decomposing corpses in the trunk of his car. He even tried to sell the car a few weeks after the murders. However, after 3 weeks, the smell became too strong to ignore, so he abandoned the car outside the city. Carlo Mercado was eventually sentenced to 3 life sentences without the possibility of parole. During the trial, Carlo showed no remorse. He remained calm, appearing indifferent to the proceedings. Carlo did not seek forgiveness from the victims' families. Surprisingly, he chose to waive his right to appeal, seemingly as a way of admitting his guilt for the murder of innocent young people. Hi everyone, thanks for returning. Let's unravel another perplexing mystery. The case of Donald Mellon. Donald Mellon grew up in a loving environment, enjoying a happy childhood in a wealthy family that owned a McDonald's in the western suburbs of Phoenix, Arizona. He was financially well off and attracted many girls, but he longed for a real family. He shunned superficial relationships and fleeting encounters. Eventually, he met his first love, Karen Dawson. Their relationship initially portrayed an ideal picture of a happy family, where Donald was a loving father and family man who was adored by his 3 daughters. He, along with his wife Karen and their children, enjoyed a comfortable life together. However, over the years, Donald developed problems with alcohol. Despite the impact on his family, he refused to seek help or stop drinking, eventually leading Karen to make the difficult decision to divorce him. This loneliness changed Donald dramatically. His old self seemed to have disappeared completely. He now sported exotic tattoos and spent his time partying at clubs, frequenting a strip club on Bourbon Street. As a regular, the club manager introduced him to Rebecca, a 23-year-old girl who had recently arrived from Nebraska. After escaping an abusive marriage, she is looking for a fresh start with her young son. Rebecca was born in Newport Beach, California, but spent most of her childhood in Omaha, Nebraska. She describes her childhood as being in a very religious household. As she entered her teens, Rebecca recounted experiences of being molested by men. She felt a lack of closeness with her parents and experienced rejection throughout her adolescence. At one point, she was placed in the custody of the Nebraska Child Welfare Department and moved between different foster homes. This sense of loneliness followed her throughout her life. When Rebecca expressed her desire to leave Omaha, her ex-boyfriend reacted violently, throwing her across the room. She was often bruised, and when she hinted at wanting to leave, he threatened her with a gun. Feeling that her life was in danger, she decided that she could no longer stay with her abusive boyfriend. One night, she escaped and ran away to Minnesota. At a cheap motel, an employee suggested that she move to Arizona, praising the beauty of the place. Rebecca really wanted to go to this place, but she decided to wait until a better time. Rebecca found a job as a sales clerk at a shopping mall, where she met a young man and they quickly got engaged in Las Vegas. He was 19 and she was 18. Their love grew stronger, and soon after, she gave birth to a son. However, their happy story took a turn for the worse. After her husband quit his job, Rebecca faced more hardships. To support her family, she began dancing at nightclubs. Fate brought Rebecca to a strip club, where she earned a good income and was able to support her family, while a nanny looked after her son. However, returning home after work was difficult because her husband, an unemployed and often drunk man, not only relied on her but also often insulted her. Eventually, Rebecca decided to leave her husband. She confided in one of her wealthy regular clients about her situation, and he gave her $20,000 to help her escape to Arizona. To protect herself, she gave a photo of her husband to the bouncers at the club, instructing them not to let him in or reveal her whereabouts. She relocated to a new apartment in East Phoenix and switched to a different nightclub. There, she met Donald. Initially, Donald wasn't fond of Rebecca, but over time, Donald became deeply infatuated with her. He loved her so much that he was willing to welcome her and her 11-year-old son into his life. However, Donald's daughters disapproved of Rebecca, believing she had a negative effect on their father. Despite their concerns, Rebecca moved in with Donald in October 2003, and they married 2 years later. Everything seemed fine until 6 months later when problems began to emerge. Rebecca, now 36, developed an alcohol addiction, influenced by her husband. Together, they drank continuously, neglecting meals. On July 31, 2012, around 10 p.m., a visibly intoxicated Rebecca called the police. She was slurring her speech and requested an ambulance for her husband, who she claimed was bleeding heavily. The police and paramedics quickly arrived at the scene to assist Donald but were taken aback by the situation. Rebecca sat calmly on the couch with a cigarette in her hand, while Donald lay bleeding on the floor beside her. As the paramedics worked on Donald, the police observed Rebecca with growing suspicion. Her apparent indifference to her husband's serious condition raised questions. They also noticed a gun protruding from beneath the pillows next to the dog and a bullet hole in the frame of her wedding portrait on the wall. In light of these findings, the police decided to take Rebecca into custody. When police questioned Rebecca about what happened, she claimed that she couldn't remember the details regarding Donald. She stated that she had just left her room when she saw him bleeding on the floor, and she immediately called 911. After answering a few more questions, she unexpectedly fell asleep during the interrogation. Donald died in the hospital a few hours later, prompting the police to start a murder investigation. Before detectives could proceed, Donald's daughters discovered that he had left a voicemail at 2:44 p.m. In the message, he asked them to call him back, and they heard a loud bang just as the message was sent. The daughters were shocked and confused when they learned of their father's death from the police. They were heartbroken to learn that these were their father's last words. After receiving their first lead, the police started investigating the crime scene and were taken aback to discover that CCTV cameras were monitoring the house. What shocked them even more was that the entire murder of Donald was captured on video. Rebecca was left alone with Donald after her son went to sleep at a friend's house. She picked up a gun and entered the living room while Donald was recording a voice message for his daughter. He was unaware of her presence until she fired the first shot. The bullet grazed his head and struck Rebecca's wedding portrait. In surprise and pain, he screamed and fell to the floor next to the couch. Rebecca returned to her room and changed into a t-shirt. She then returned to the living room and shot her husband, Donald, in the head. As blood poured across the room, she sat on the couch next to him as he died. She lit a cigarette and watched him bleed for 23 minutes before finally calling 911. The scene was so horrific that the footage was never made public. Surveillance videos clearly showed that it was a cold-blooded murder. When questioned, her story kept changing. Eventually, she claimed that Donald was planning to hire someone to kill her and make it look like a robbery gone wrong. On July 31st, while Donald was on the phone, Rebecca overheard the plan he was discussing. In a state of panic, she grabbed the gun, went into the living room, and fired, but she could not remember what happened after that. As police dug deeper into their story, they uncovered disturbing details about the couple's circumstances. Their home was filled with excessive drinking, creating an unhealthy atmosphere for raising children. The Rebecca expressed concern for her teenage son, who witnessed everything. Together, Donald and Rebecca were on a path of self-destruction, amassing not only alcohol but also a frightening collection of weapons. They seemed to drink constantly, leading to a concerning situation. Friends revealed that Donald had been controlling of Rebecca from the beginning of their relationship. He pressured her to quit her job at a strip club. He also frequently criticized and insulted her. He even forced Rebecca to get a tattoo of his name, claiming it was a way to mark her. In April 2006, after a night of drinking at a bar, Rebecca and Donald got into an argument that escalated into a physical fight. Donald began to violently beat Rebecca. A deputy sheriff from a neighboring county happened to witness the incident and decided to follow them, calling the police for assistance. The deputy reported seeing Rebecca trying to escape from Donald, who then approached her and struck her on the head. Rebecca fell to the ground, and Donald subsequently grabbed her and attempted to take her to a waiting taxi. At that moment, the police intervened and detained them. Rebecca had a bloody nose, scratches on her lips, and blood stains on her shirt. When the officer attempted to photograph her injuries, she turned away and gave him the middle finger. Although the officer witnessed the incident, Rebecca defended her husband, insisting that he had done nothing wrong and that she had simply tripped and fallen. She told the police they were wasting their time and that she would not leave him. Donald had a small cut on his cheek and around his right eye. He told the officer that he and Rebecca were having a normal conversation. He denied it was an argument, claiming she turned to face him and tripped, causing her face to hit his. Donald was arrested on assault charges but was released shortly afterward. He also denied any wrongdoing. In December 2006, police were called to the Donald home shortly after midnight by someone who reported a domestic dispute. The caller mentioned an argument between the couple, during which Donald broke a pool table and knocked it over. A witness noted that the couple frequently had arguments that became violent. When the officers arrived, they found the couple arguing in the dressing room. Donald was standing over her, yelling, while she sat on the floor in tears. Rebecca refused to explain why she was crying and even declined to give the police her name. She yelled at the officers to leave her house, which led to her arrest on suspicion of obstructing justice. By March 2011, the Donald had relocated to West Phoenix. The police arrived after someone triggered the alarm. Donald informed the police that his wife had injured her face. He was unsure who activated the alarm but suspected it was the dog. In the bedroom, the officers spoke with Rebecca, who gave her name. She looked at a female officer and whispered, "Help me." As is routine, the officers began asking questions to assess her situation. After a brief conversation, the officers concluded that Rebecca was in danger and arrested her husband on suspicion of domestic violence. When the officers told Rebecca that her husband had been arrested, she became angry and said, "You don't know what you just did to me," Rebecca cried. "He's going to kill me." The officers offered to take her to a relative's house or a shelter, but she refused. They left a domestic violence flyer on her bed before leaving. In the summer of 2012, Rebecca told her psychologist that her husband had become extremely paranoid and suspected that she was plotting against him. By that time, the Donald were living in a $400,000 home in the Willa area of downtown Phoenix. Rebecca mentioned that Donald had changed the locks, and only he had a key. She also noted that he had installed cameras throughout the house to monitor her. A subsequent investigation revealed that the surveillance camera system had been installed after their home had been burglarized, with cameras positioned both inside and outside the property. In late July 2012, Rebecca decided she wanted to leave her husband. She claimed he had broken her iPod, damaged her phone, and locked her inside the house. During a session with a psychologist, she expressed feeling trapped and hopeless. On the night of July 31, 2012, they hosted former neighbors with whom they had a good relationship. The neighbors noticed Rebecca was drinking heavily and voiced their concerns before leaving, which upset her husband. Rebecca claimed that she and her husband had argued that night. She said he threw her across the room, leaving her scared and having to reach for a weapon. The incident was not caught on surveillance cameras, however, police discovered footage that showed multiple instances of violence, both from Donald and sometimes from Rebecca. Their relationship was tumultuous, marked by intense emotions, conflict, and years of violent arguments. Surveillance cameras captured multiple instances of Donald pushing Rebecca to the ground, hitting her on the head, and occasionally choking her. On one occasion, he even grabbed her legs and threw her into the pool. After her arrest, Rebecca claimed she acted in self-defense. But it was clear that Rebecca had fired the shots. In a reduced sentence, Rebecca pleaded guilty to second-degree murder. During her trial, she admitted that she had been drinking that night and could not remember what happened afterward. While he lay bleeding, she sat and calmly smoked a cigarette. Moreover, the trial revealed undeniable evidence. A video of the incident was shown in court, leading the jury to convict Rebecca of first-degree murder. She received a life sentence in prison, with the possibility of parole in 20 years, making her eligible for release in 2032. After her sentence was announced, Rebecca expressed her sorrow. Rebecca was escorted out of the courtroom, trying to approach her son while repeatedly telling him that she loved him. She kept her eyes on her son until the door closed behind her. Custody of her son was granted to his maternal grandmother. Welcome back, mystery lovers. Today's case is going to keep you on the edge of your seat. The case of Kelly Lane. Kelly Lane was an Australian beauty and a champion water polo athlete. Despite her success, she faced a series of unfortunate events that led to tragedy, leaving many unanswered questions about her story. Born in 1975, Kelly grew up in a sports-oriented family. Her father, originally known as Bim, later became a police officer named Robert Lane. Her mother, Sandra, worked in a medical institution and coached water polo. Kelly had a brother named Morgan. The family was affluent and lived in a prestigious area of Sydney, Australia. Kelly was a golden child, attending Lee High School and later Mayclara. After graduating, she enrolled at the University of Newcastle to study art and then attended the Australian College of Physical Education. During this time, she started her sports career, working as a physical education teacher and coach at a girls' high school. Following in her mother's footsteps, Kelly became a highly skilled water polo player, which made her famous in her city. Her parents were proud of her accomplishments and were themselves respected professionals. Kelly took part in almost all public events, especially sports-related ones, and had a bright future ahead. Her mother was both her coach and manager, dedicating a lot of time to Kelly's career. Initially, Sandra personally handled her daughter's training, but later Kelly was coached by a more experienced trainer. Kelly dedicated herself completely to sports. Her parents were supportive and actively helped her progress in her chosen path. Despite her hectic schedule, Kelly was calm and reserved. She had a fit, athletic body and natural beauty, seldom wearing makeup. Her attractiveness and sociable nature made her popular even in high school. In 1992, when she was finishing her studies, Kelly met Aaron. They had a lot in common and their relationship developed into a romance. At the age of 17, she unexpectedly became pregnant while still in school and, not ready to become a mother, she chose to have an abortion. Aaron supported her decision. In order to continue her athletic career, Kelly kept her pregnancy and abortion a secret, never telling her parents. By early 1994, Kelly's relationship with Aaron ended due to frequent arguments. She then began an affair with a married man and became pregnant at 19, despite using contraception. She did not plan to keep the child and decided to have another abortion. This decision was made in secret, as the father did not want the child either. Kelly sought a different clinic for more confidentiality but was initially refused because the pregnancy was too advanced for a safe procedure. She had to convince the doctors to perform the surgery and they finally agreed. At that time, she was in her 20th week of pregnancy. Remarkably, during 5 months of intense training, no one noticed her condition because athletes often endure challenging situations. Kelly, determined to participate in the Olympic Games, did not show weakness or ask for special treatment. Her athleticism helped her maintain a fit appearance, aided by loose clothing. Sometimes, a woman's body structure can conceal a pregnancy until later stages, as was the case with Kelly. Although the abortion was traumatic, she felt relieved to have resolved the situation and continued with her life, pursuing sports and forming new relationships. In 1995, Kelly started dating a new boyfriend named Duncan, and they were together until 1998. Duncan professed his deep love for Kelly and expressed a desire to marry her. Both were athletes who enjoyed parties and entertainment. During this time, Kelly became pregnant again with an unwanted child. After her previous traumatic abortion, she was reluctant to seek medical help. Despite being pregnant, Kelly still chose to compete in sports and compete in the World Cup. Practicing a demanding sport like water polo while pregnant is no easy feat, yet Kelly managed it. Despite the intense physical demands, no one noticed the strain she was under, not even her boyfriend on the team, as Kelly kept her pregnancy a secret. To maintain her privacy, she wore a towel to the pool and only removed it before entering the water, avoiding showing her figure in a swimsuit by wearing loose clothing. Her boyfriend remained unaware but later recalled that she never let him touch her stomach and had limited contact with him. Around the 7th month of her pregnancy, an unexpected situation occurred. During practice, a swimmer in the water next to Kelly noticed her protruding belly and suspected that she might be pregnant. The swimmer shared her suspicions with her coach. Kelly's coach then asked her about it. Kelly firmly denied being pregnant, and the coach, upon seeing her small belly, was reassured. Kelly continued to lie, fearing that it would ruin her athletic career. Kelly was participating in a local water polo event. During the event, she felt unwell and was taken to hospital on a stretcher, where she gave birth to a baby girl. She experienced severe contractions, which likely began during the competition. After the birth, Kelly abandoned the baby, who was later adopted. She even named another man as the father. Despite this, Kelly was forced to stay in the hospital with the baby until she was discharged. She did not inform her family about the birth, telling her parents that she was with friends, which they believed. No one was worried about her, allowing her to carry out her plan. On her birthday, she managed to leave the hospital to have a drink with friends. She became intoxicated. After returning from the party, at the beginning of the year, Kelly began working as a teacher at a private school. She also continued her water polo career, representing Australia at the World Championships in Canada. Kelly performed well and won a silver medal. When Kelly turned 21, she became pregnant again. Despite being pregnant, Kelly maintained a romantic relationship with Duncan, who was deeply in love and considering marriage. However, she chose to keep her pregnancy a secret from her family, friends, and Duncan, even though they had been together for a long time and he was eager to marry her. Throughout her pregnancy, Kelly did not show any physical signs. She remained slim and did not alter her lifestyle. She regularly consumed alcohol, attended parties, engaged in intimate relationships, and continued to exercise vigorously, just as she always had. In a small suburb where everyone knew each other, Kelly faced the challenge of being the subject of gossip during her pregnancies. Many people envied her and suspected something was wrong, fueling rumors about her condition. This suspicion was partly due to changes in her behavior, like wearing towels or loose-fitting clothes. While those close to her didn't notice anything unusual, some outsiders found it odd. Regardless, Kelly consistently denied any rumors about being pregnant, insisting she was fine, and no one challenged her assertions, as there was no proof to suggest otherwise. In April 1996, Kelly's relationship with Duncan began to deteriorate. He moved to a different area and bought a house, creating distance between them. Later, Kelly discovered that he had cheated on her with one of the athletes on her team. Although this betrayal hurt her, Kelly chose to forgive him and worked to save their relationship. On September 12, in the year 1996, Kelly secretly gave birth to her second daughter, whom she named Tegan. She had informed her relatives that she would be spending the weekend with friends, but instead, she went to the hospital to give birth. Kelly chose a hospital far from home, reducing the risk of encountering someone she knew. For the first time during her pregnancy, she used her real name and date of birth at the hospital. She even considered keeping the baby. However, she later changed her address and phone number. At the time, it was relatively easy to hide or change personal information. Australians had access to free health care, including anonymous services if needed. Unlike her previous children, baby Tegan felt the warmth of her mother, indicating that a bond had formed between them. Kelly spent time with her daughter, breastfeeding, bathing and sleeping together. During her labor, she consulted with doctors about her future as a mother. Unlike before, she tried to avoid or abandon her child. Just 2 days after giving birth, Kelly and her daughter were discharged from hospital. However, she missed an important test required in Australia, which involves taking blood from the baby's heel for newborn screening. The early discharge was necessary because of a lack of beds in the hospital. Both Kelly and her daughter felt well and were quickly discharged to make room for other patients. On the day she was discharged from the hospital, Kelly left home between 11 a.m. and 2 p.m., and no one saw the baby again. She returned to her parents' house around 3 p.m. without her daughter. Since no one knew she had given birth, there were no suspicions or questions about her absence. That evening, she met her boyfriend and went out to a family wedding where she acted normally as if nothing had happened. Her behavior raised no concerns among her relatives. For the next 10 years, no one suspected the existence of Tegan. The baby had vanished during the time between leaving the hospital and arriving at her parents' home. Since only Kelly and the doctors were aware of the baby's existence, no one searched for Tegan. The doctors did not follow up on the baby's fate, so the information remained hidden. At the end of 1998, Kelly became pregnant again due to her carelessness. By the time she discovered her pregnancy, she had already broken up with her boyfriend, Duncan. This time, she decided not to tell anyone and wanted to have an abortion. In early February 1999, she visited the new abortion clinic in Queensland. However, her request for an abortion was denied because she arrived at the clinic in the 25th week of her pregnancy, which was too late for the procedure. She faced similar refusals at other clinics, leaving her with no choice but to give birth. Kelly secretly gave birth in the hospital and immediately put the baby up for adoption. By that time, the laws regarding adoption had changed, making the process more complicated. She spoke briefly with a social worker about her lack of documents. Kelly lied, claiming it was her first birth, and provided her real name but gave false information about her contact details and address. She also stated that she did not know who the child's father was. Because of the incorrect information she provided, the social worker's job became much more difficult. When the organization that assists new mothers reviewed her case, they realized they had been misled and that this was not Kelly's first birth. They began searching for her to discuss the situation, as they lacked the necessary information to legally finalize the adoption of the child. The adoption process in the country has changed significantly, but Kelly was not aware of this. Consequently, the social workers handling the adoption paperwork performed a thorough background check on the child's biological mother. As they investigated her history and life, they uncovered numerous inconsistencies and falsehoods. They investigated Kelly's situation and found that she likely had a daughter named Tegan, whom she had given birth to several years earlier. Kelly did not abandon Tegan, she left the hospital with her. However, the only information available was that Tegan was born in a hospital near Bern. After leaving the hospital, there was no communication from Kelly. She never Tegan took for checkups, vaccinations, or visits to the pediatrician. For 3 years, there were no updates about the child, and Kelly's biological mother denied that Kelly had ever given birth. This situation raised alarms, leading social services employees to reach out to Kelly's mother. She confidently insisted that they were mistaken and claimed she had no grandchildren. However, the social workers suspected something was wrong and contacted the police, who began their investigation. Meanwhile, Kelly went about her life, unaware that the police were getting closer to uncovering her secrets. In 2000, on her 25th birthday, it was revealed that she was pregnant again, and this time she chose to keep the child. For the first time, she shared this news with her family and boyfriend. This decision was likely influenced by Kelly's sports career, as she was aging and had stopped competing. Kelly tried to work as a coach and present herself as a respectable mother, which was beneficial for her at that time. However, she was unaware that the investigation into the disappearance of baby Tegan was intensifying. Later, police reached out to her regarding her previous pregnancies, and Kelly was summoned for questioning. This time, she could not evade it, as police had already gathered extensive information about her. Kelly admitted to 5 pregnancies, including those that were terminated, between the ages of 17 and 24. She had 2 abortions and gave birth to 3 children, all without her family's knowledge. She stated that Tegan was born from a secret relationship with an older man named Andrew Morris. Kelly met Andrew on Vis Beach Street, where he worked in finance, and they connected in a bar. Their relationship was short-lived. When Kelly discovered she was pregnant and shared the news with Andrew, he was excited and awaited the birth. She claimed that after the baby was born, Andrew took Tegan but did not clarify where they would live. Kelly was unable to provide further details about Andrew. Nevertheless, a portrait was created based on her description for the investigation. The police began by checking their records, with the initial goal of finding the baby's father, Andrew, to find out where the child was. The police were stumped because they could not find any men matching Kelly's description. The potential matches were either too young or too old, and no one by that name lived on Bibbich Street, which cast doubt on Kelly's story. They eventually discovered an Andrew Morris, who had previously been in a relationship with Kelly, but that was years before her child was born. When the police contacted him, he confirmed that he had not seen Kelly for a long time and did not have any children with her. He had moved away a long time ago and had never lived at the address Kelly had provided. A month later, the investigation hit a temporary pause because there were no new leads on the child. However, a new police took over the case, and Kelly was called in for questioning again. She recounted the same story she had shared with the previous police, but some details had changed, and which the new police noticed. For instance, the father's last name had suddenly shifted from Andrew Morris to Andrew Norris. With a friendly smile, Kelly claimed she might have made a mistake during the earlier questioning and now remembered the correct last name, which confused the police. They directly asked her if she had killed her daughter. Kelly was surprised and denied it, asking to stop the audio recording of the interrogation. She was clearly distressed, mainly worried about how discussing her pregnancy might impact her career. However, there wasn't enough evidence to charge her, so the Kelly was released, and the investigation continued. Police, after considerable effort, were unable to locate Andrew Norris. However, they were unable to find any men matching Kelly's description, nor were there any children resembling Tegan enrolled in schools or kindergartens in the Minley area or surrounding communities. Police sifted through some 86,000 birth records in an attempt to identify potential adoptive parents for the child, but they found no new leads. Despite Kelly's increasing dishonesty, she continued to mislead the police. She said she saw Tegan 1-year-old in mid-1997, but no one could confirm her claim. Despite this, the police remained optimistic and continued their investigation. They contacted Kelly's ex-boyfriend, Duncan, as her relationship with him coincided with the clandestine relationship that led to Tegan's birth. Duncan maintains that he did not know about Kelly's affair. Duncan suspected that Kelly was pregnant, but she never mentioned it to him. He noticed that she never let him touch her belly, though he didn't think much of it at the time. They lived apart and only saw each other occasionally. He willingly agreed to provide his DNA for testing. The results showed that he was not the biological father of Kelly's first or third child, as both were adopted by other families. Unfortunately, the police did not have DNA samples from the missing baby, so they couldn't confirm if Duncan was the father of Tegan. Connecting all the data to confirm Tegan's existence was a challenge because information about the mother and baby was incomplete and inaccurate, making the investigation even more difficult. While the police worked to solve the mystery and find the Tegan, Kelly continued her life without concern. During this time, rumors spread around town that Kelly had multiple abortions, had children, and abandoned them. These rumors damaged her coaching career and damaged her reputation. Kelly eventually gave birth to a baby girl, whom she chose to keep, and she introduced her to all her relatives. In 2004, to help restore her reputation, she married the father of her fourth child. The police were unable to get any information about Tegan's father, Andrew Norris. Kelly frequently changed her story, which caused the police to lose confidence in her. The case stalled and they offered Kelly a deal. If she pleaded guilty to the child's murder and revealed where the body was buried, she would not face any charges and could avoid jail time. Despite these terms, Kelly maintained her innocence, claiming that she did not kill the child. She claimed that the child was still alive and suggested that both the child's and the father's names may have been changed, or that they may have left the country and are now untraceable. She believed that this was the reason why the police had been unable to locate them. The police found the scenario unlikely. Why would Andrew change both his name and Tegan's if he hadn't kidnapped her? He could have simply taken his daughter away from her mother and updated the necessary paperwork, enrolling her in a nursery, school, or hospital. Why did he remain in hiding for so many years? There is no clear reason for this. The situation was further complicated by a ban on sharing information about the case, which prevented police from seeking help from the media or the public. When Kelly declined a plea bargain and police failed to investigate for years, they concluded that Tegan was dead and the case was treated as a murder. They also deemed Andrew to be a fictitious person. However, there was no solid evidence supporting these claims. Despite the absence of direct evidence or testimony against Kelly, she was charged with Tegan's murder on November 17, 2009. Kelly maintained her innocence, and the case was referred to court. The prosecution claims that Tegan's murder occurred on September 14, 1996, the day Kelly was discharged from the hospital. Shortly after leaving, the baby went missing. Kelly had very little time to commit the crime and dispose of the body. To protect her social status and image, Kelly hid her pregnancy and discarded the baby. She returned home the same day as if nothing had happened, met her boyfriend, and went to celebrate a relative's wedding. During the trial, Kelly maintained her innocence. Her first boyfriend, Aaron, supported her and they rekindled their relationship after her divorce. He shared that it was difficult for them to decide to terminate her pregnancy the first time, and it was a difficult healing process for Kelly, leading him to believe that she was not capable of murder. However, he did not know that she later had another abortion and gave birth to the children she abandoned. In front of the jury, the prosecutor had no concrete evidence, witnesses, or bodies. Only circumstantial evidence against her. Prosecutors described Kelly as a dangerous, manipulative person who would do anything to get what she wanted. Her ability to abandon her children raised suspicions about her capacity to kill. A psychiatrist confirmed that Kelly displayed narcissistic traits and was adept at playing the victim. The trial lasted 4 months and was complicated. Despite the uncertainty of the indictment, the jury found Kelly Lane guilty, not of murdering Tegan, but of perjury. The verdict was handed down on December 13, 2010. The trial reconvened on April 15, 2011, when Kelly confessed to killing Tegan. She was sentenced to 18 years in prison. As a mother unable to care for her many children, she began her sentence in prison, with all of her appeals being rejected. During the trial, Kelly displayed no emotions, appearing indifferent to her baby's fate, which likely influenced the jury's decision. After entering prison, she broke up with Aaron but continued to send him love letters. Meanwhile, Aaron had begun dating someone else. This new girlfriend requested in a reply letter that Kelly stop contacting them, which angered Kelly. In response, she sent letters to Aaron's new girlfriend and asked her friends to harass her. Kelly's cellmates joined in, insulting Aaron's new girlfriend on social media. The woman, tired of being harassed, decided to end her relationship with Aaron. Kelly, 48, is currently serving a prison sentence but will soon be eligible for parole. She maintains her innocence and insists that her daughter is still alive. Kelly's parents fully support her and believe the court's decision was unfair due to a lack of evidence linking Kelly to the child. In an interview, Kelly Lane revealed that she hid her pregnancy to avoid embarrassing her parents. She said that she had taken birth control pills incorrectly multiple times, leading to unwanted pregnancies. New, alarming information has emerged in connection with the case. On May 12, 2023, a taxi driver contacted the police and provided a tip. He revealed that on the day Kelly was discharged from the hospital, he had picked her and her baby up. During the ride home, Kelly asked him to stop the car. She then got out and left the baby on the side of the road. Although the driver testified to this, he did nothing at the time. After dropping Kelly off at home, he was racked with guilt and decided to go back to check on the baby. When he arrived, he saw a woman who said she would take care of the baby, but he left without any information about her. The police attempted to verify this account, but they could not find any confirmation or anyone else who had seen the woman. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Matthew Turner Fisher. After the tragic death of his wife, Ernest Fisher was left to care for 4 children, all of whom were now adults. However, some members of the family were traumatized by the loss of their mother. Initially, this was considered a normal response to grief, as everyone processes loss differently. Some people may be overwhelmed by grief, leading to disturbing behaviors. Ernest was a retired man living a quiet life in the southern suburbs of Parallel, near Burt, Australia. The family lived modestly, with Ernest raising his 4 children on his own. His eldest son, Joshua, was 26 in 2016 and dedicated his free time to studying for a programming diploma. The second son, Matthew, was 23 and worked as a freight carrier. His third daughter, Hannah, 20, is studying design and spends all her free time studying. The youngest daughter, Sylvia, 16, is still in high school. Ernest's wife passed away 2 years prior to the events described, in 2014, due to cancer. Her death was a significant tragedy for the entire family. On her deathbed, she asked her son Matthew to take care of his siblings and to support their father as he aged. Matthew agreed to this promise. Like the rest of the family, he felt a deep sadness over their loss. However, shortly after their mother's death, the household began to deteriorate rapidly. Ernest lost his job, which led to a lack of finances. Within months, the situation became chaotic, with furniture and books scattered throughout every room. It is important to note that the youngest daughter was not involved in the events described. In contrast, Matthew was a sociable and attractive young man who was popular with girls. His turbulent personal life set him apart from his siblings. Unlike his siblings, who spent most of their time studying, Matthew was active and independent. He regularly went to the gym and participated in many outdoor sports such as soccer, basketball, and volleyball. He was also the only one in the family with a job, which allowed him to maintain his interests. In contrast, his siblings were quite shy. Hannah and Joshua preferred to spend their time alone studying and rarely interacted with each other, leading to a strained relationship between the children. On Monday, October 3, 2016, 23-year-old Matthew Fisher failed to report to work, which was unusual for him. He had always been a responsible employee, the sole provider for his family, and he never missed a shift. Concerned, his colleagues and friends tried to contact him, but their efforts were in vain. They then reached out to his family for information about his whereabouts. Matthew's father seemed unconcerned and jokingly shared a story about how Matthew had run away to travel in Eastern Australia with a wealthy girl he had admired from a magazine cover. This story is told by Joshua and Hannah as told by their father. Matthew's friends were suspicious of the situation. Matthew had never thought about it before. Matthew's car was at home, why didn't he drive away? His friends suspected Matthew's father and other family members of lying, but Ernest only responded with cheerful jokes. Later, Matthew's friends even tried to enter his house to gather any information about Matthew, but they were unsuccessful. They suspected something was wrong and believed that Matthew would not simply run away from home. They knew about his difficult relationship with his family, who often criticized him and felt jealous. At that time, Matthew also did not have a girlfriend, so his friends continued to search for clues about what really happened to him. They discovered that Matthew had gone missing on October 1st. He had failed to show up for an appointment with a friend and had not contacted anyone since. Meanwhile, Matthew's phone remained silent, causing his friends to worry, but his family seemed unconcerned. They stopped looking for him and ceased all contact. 17 days after his disappearance, Matthew's friends went to the police to report him missing and share their concerns about how his family was acting. The police took their statements and attempted to call Matthew, but his phone was turned off, making it impossible to locate him. The police quickly contacted Matthew's father, Ernest. He repeated the story he had shared with Matthew's friends, that Matthew had run off with a new girlfriend. However, the police found Ernest's lack of concern for his son suspicious. They believed Matthew's car was still at the house, making it impossible for him to leave without it. Additionally, they were unable to find the new girlfriend. After reviewing Matthew's messages, the police found no evidence to support the father's story. On October 22nd, they called Ernest into the police station for questioning. He initially stands by his statement, but when the police confront him about Matthew's death, claiming that they have substantial evidence, Ernest's story begins to become confusing. The police indicated that they had good reason to believe that Matthew was dead and had not left the house. At the 90th minute of interrogation, Ernest took a short break and then suddenly confessed that he killed his son because he had been swearing at him and insulting him. Ernest claimed he felt there was no other solution and could only think of murder. Ernest said that Matthew frequently threatened to use violence against Ernest and Matthew's siblings. Ernest also mentioned that Matthew often accused him of not getting his mother to the hospital in time for cancer treatment, which might have saved her, and blamed him for her death. This blame frustrated Ernest. After speaking with Ernest's other children, Joshua and Hannah, the police discovered that they were also present at the crime scene and assisted their father in covering up the incident. On October 1, 2016, a tragic event occurred. On that day, Ernest had planned to drive to a friend's house to watch the final of a football match. At the same time, his son Matthew needed a car to run some errands. Although Matthew had his own car, the situation caused a conflict between them, leading to a horrific incident that occurred between 11 o'clock and 11:30 in the morning. Unable to bear the argument with his son, Ernest went to the stables in the backyard and took 2 knives. When he returned home, he found Matthew in Joshua's room and attacked him, inflicting multiple stab wounds. One knife pierced Matthew's heart and lung. After the attack, Ernest left the room, leaving his son bleeding on the floor. Meanwhile, his other children, Joshua and Hannah, were eating lunch in the living room. They ran to the sound and found Matthew lying on the floor, covered in blood and unresponsive. Hannah suggested they call the police, but her father strongly opposed the idea. Ernest managed to convince her not to go through with it. Instead, he went into the backyard to dig a grave while Hannah and Joshua remained frozen in place. Ernest, standing beside his dead son, is more worried about missing a soccer game with his friends than losing his son. After digging the grave, Ernest returned to the house and spoke to his children. He asked them to help clean up the crime scene and bury Matthew in the backyard while he was away. He then calmly got ready and left to enjoy a soccer game with his friends, seemingly without remorse for having just harmed a family member. Remarkably, Hannah and Joshua complied with their father's request. They meticulously cleaned up the blood in the room with cleaning supplies. The room was covered in blood, with bloodstains on the walls and furniture, indicative of the brutal attack on his son. Fearing a similar fate, Joshua and Hannah followed their father's orders without question. They first used bleach to wipe down the walls, then the furniture, carpets, and floors. They cleaned the room thoroughly and burned anything that could not be wiped clean to remove potential evidence. As Joshua and Hannah entered the backyard, they decided to dig deeper than the grave their father had hastily dug. This was important to ensure the body was more securely hidden. Since Matthew was quite large, they had difficulty moving him. They dragged him on a stepladder and across the lawn to the grave, where they dumped him and buried him unceremoniously. They then returned home, showered, changed their clothes, and cleaned up the area. Ernest returned home about 5 hours later. He checked to make sure the children had cleaned up the blood in the room and disposed of the body, and he praised them for their efforts. The youngest daughter, Sylvia, 16, was visiting relatives on the day of the murder and did not witness the horrific incident. When asked how hard he stabbed his son, Ernest replied, "Very hard. Because he wanted to stab his son to death. If Matthew had attacked back, Ernest will die. Because Matthew was stronger than him." When the police asked Ernest how many injuries he had caused to his son, he replied, "You should dig him up and find out." When told he was going to be arrested for murder, Ernest laughed and joked, showing no concern about the situation. The police asked him why he had not considered other options for dealing with his son. Ernest claimed that he had no other choice. The police suggested he could have contacted the police to help remove his son from their home or sought a safe place for his family. Ernest laughed again, saying he didn't want to spend money and was against moving. He viewed killing his son as the only way to free his family. After this admission, he led the police to the location of the body. Upon searching the family's yard, they discovered the Matthew buried there, as the father had indicated. A month had passed since Matthew's disappearance, and only 10 days had gone by since his friends reported it to the police. The most shocking part was that the father, while giving his testimony, laughed and joked about his murdered son, showing no remorse for his actions. He firmly believed he was justified. Ernest, 65, Joshua, 26, and Hannah, 20, were all arrested and charged with murder and concealing the body. Matthew was later buried next to his mother. Funds were raised to cover the funeral costs, supplemented by Matthew's savings. He bought a large headstone for his mother, while the rest of his family seemed unconcerned, not even having a headstone. Police were skeptical of the motive given. Ernest considered Matthew a danger to the entire family, leading him to decide to eliminate him. Friends and acquaintances of the Matthew consistently described him as a good person who had never exhibited aggression or violence. It was puzzling that if Matthew truly posed a threat to the family, they had never filed a complaint with the police prior to this tragedy. The police interviewed all members of the Ernest family to uncover the true motives and piece together the sequence of events. The police spoke to Ernest again, who claimed that Matthew was a cruel and dangerous man who regularly used drugs. He said that he had to kill Matthew to end the atmosphere of fear that Matthew had created in their family. Joshua was very emotional during the interview. He cried as he described the image of the crime scene and younger brother's bloody body in his mind. In the room, he saw his father holding 2 knives and standing over Matthew's body. He did not see the struggle or the moment of the murder. Hannah remained composed during her interrogation but repeatedly recounted the same story. She expressed concerns that her brother Matthew was very different from the rest of the family and could be a threat. He had often yelled at her and had used physical force once during their teenage years when they got into a fight. However, Hannah could not point to any other incidents that proved Matthew was dangerous. She admitted that she felt remorse and guilt over the situation. Hannah wished she could go back in time and call the police immediately after the incident. At that moment, Joshua and Hannah were afraid of their angry father and did not speak up against him. However, they could not understand why they continued to live with Ernest and their Matthew's body in the yard as if nothing had happened. If they felt guilty, why didn't they go to the police later on? The hearing for the case began in mid-2018, and it took 2 years for the investigation to gather and analyze all the materials. During the trial, the Ernest and their defense argued that the murder was an act of self-defense, claiming that Matthew posed a serious threat to the entire family. The lawyers for the Ernest spoke negatively about the Matthew, portraying him as a violent and aggressive person who had attacked them. However, no one provided convincing evidence of Matthew's aggression or any real threat he had posed. No one noticed any bruises on Hannah or Joshua, and it is unclear what caused the family conflict or whether Ernest was the one who started it. It is also worrying that Ernest chose to kill his loved one rather than seek police help to resolve the issue or simply remove him from the house if he truly posed a threat. In court, Ernest Fisher appeared unusually calm, which raised suspicions. He did not seem to show any remorse for what had happened and did not feel any sadness for his son. Ernest was often rude in court, insulting everyone involved, and was frequently reprimanded for his behavior. Family acquaintances described Ernest as a ruthless person, and several testified that they had never seen Matthew show any hostility toward his relatives. His friends disputed Ernest's testimony, insisting that Matthew was not aggressive and did not use drugs. Matthew regularly underwent random drug and alcohol testing at work and had never had any problems. Friends noted that after their mother's death, Matthew's relationship with their father and siblings became very strained. Joshua and Hannah were often depressed. They rarely left the house, rarely changed clothes, did not work, and kept the house in disarray. They hardly communicated with each other and were heavily dependent on Matthew for support. Matthew had to take on the role of primary provider for the family. Initially, he understood the situation, but this temporary role lasted too long. Joshua and Hannah were content with their current situation and did not want to look for work. Matthew felt frustrated with his family because he was tired of being responsible for the other adult members of the family, which felt like a burden. Despite his efforts to comfort them, they were in vain. They preferred to live a closed life, relying on him, and creating more tension in their relationships. Matthew's friends dismissed the idea that he was aggressive or hurtful to his father. Although he could have stayed away from his family's problems for a long time, he chose to stay and support them. He promised his mother before she died that he would take care of them. Matthew, like anyone else, can sometimes lose his temper during arguments. However, he doesn't seem to be a cruel or violent person. He even has a tattoo on his arm that says, "Family is everything." Despite the many testimonies presented by the prosecution, Ernest's lawyer maintained that the father had acted in self-defense. Meanwhile, Matthew's siblings believed their father killed him to protect them, and they supported him during the trial. They were not charged as accomplices to the murder. Instead, they faced charges related to the disposal of the body and evidence. Further information suggested that Ernest had been planning to eliminate his son for a long time. It was discovered that he had purchased 2 knives well in advance, which he had saved specifically for the act of stabbing Matthew, indicating a premeditated intent. At the end of a 3-week trial, the jury reached a verdict. After deliberating for 2 hours, Ernest Fisher was found guilty of premeditated murder. He was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 18 years. Ernest showed no emotion when the sentence was announced. The judge also highlighted that the defendant did not show any remorse for his actions and criticized Ernest for forcing his children into a horrific choice. He should not have placed the children in such a difficult situation. Joshua and Hannah, out of deep loyalty and fear of their father, made a poor decision. The judge noted that one of the worst experiences for anyone is to be harmed by their own loving family. Joshua Fisher received a 4-year sentence with the possibility of parole after 2 years, while Hannah was sentenced to 3 years and 8 months, eligible for parole after 22 months. Hi everyone, thanks for returning. Let's unravel another horrible case. The case of Jacobson family. Neil Jacobson was born in 1961 to Harold Jacobs, a former Marine, and Goldie, a homemaker. He had two sisters, Deborah and Robin. Although the parents were strict, they also loved their children very much. Despite the outward calm, but Neil's parents faced some challenges. His mother struggled with lifelong depression, managed with medication and therapy. On the contrary, his father is a calm person and a reliable support for the family, but sometimes he cannot avoid moments of breakdown. Neil also faced mental health issues, likely inherited from his mother, and tried to meet the high standards set by his parents. His sisters, however, seemed unaffected by psychological issues. Neighbors saw family members treating each other with respect and love. Neil's first serious problems began after he was admitted to Montclair State University. He successfully completed his initial years, but each new stage became increasingly difficult. Additionally, he took a job to support himself. He tried his best to manage the workload from both his studies and his job, while also wanting to make his parents proud. However, at times, he couldn't handle it. As a result, just before earning his bachelor's degree, he suffered a breakdown and dropped out of school. Despite facing psychological difficulties and strictness from his parents, he still received support from his father. Yet, it was always very hard for him to accept that he couldn't live up to his parent example. Neil's relationships with women were often complicated and not smooth. However, when he was 29, he met Frankie at the gym. She was 33 at the time. He worked on Long Island, while Frankie worked on Wall Street. Their shared profession as stockbrokers brought them together. They both lived in the same residential complex in Queens, New York. Initially friends, they gradually began dating. Their mutual interests and activities drew them closer. They spent many weekends together over the years. Diving, cycling, and other sports. Their relationship was genuinely happy, as noted by all their friends. On New Year's Eve in 1989, they announced their engagement, and by the end of July 1991, they were married. They decided to start their own business. Neil opened a mortgage brokerage firm in 1993, and a few years later, Frankie left her job to join him in growing the company. Their business prospered, and by 2002, they were able to purchase a luxury home. Not everything went smoothly for them. They always wanted children, but Frankie couldn't get pregnant. She was undergoing infertility treatment for a long time, and finally, a miracle happened. She became pregnant and gave birth to twins, Eric and Joshua, in 2003. The two boys are a great couple and support each other well. Joshua had speech difficulties, but they did everything to support the boy. He attended specialized therapy that their wealth allowed them to afford. During this time, Neil grew tired of the weather in New Jersey, where their mansion was located. In addition, his father Harold's health was deteriorating, and it was difficult for him to visit them because of the distance. To be closer to his father, he decided to move to Florida. He bought 4 properties in the Palm Beach area, 3 condos, and a dream home worth about $1 million. He sees apartments as a good business opportunity to earn rental income. Neil started planning to move, but Frankie was not excited about it. She enjoyed their current home because her family, friends, and business were there, and their children were still young. She did not want to leave, which caused some disagreements between them. However, they managed to work through these difficulties. Neil didn't pressure she to move immediately. Instead, he gave her time to consider it. During a vacation, they visited their dream house, which was still unfurnished, so they slept on air mattresses and gradually got used to the place. Frankie eventually grew fond of it. A few years later, she was ready to move. By July 2007, they relocated to Florida with their children. The children got involved in sports and achieved their first successes. Besides taking care of the children and managing the household, Frankie was also creative and worked on writing a children's book. However, In 2008, their family began to face serious problems. At that time, the real estate market bubble burst, causing a financial crisis that affected many other sectors. The apartments did not generate the income Neil had anticipated, investments did not pay off, previous deals failed, and new purchases were unsuccessful. Consequently, Neil found himself unable to repay the loans he had taken out. Neil, once a successful businessman with over $2 million in capital, is now facing the same amount of debt, and he is struggling to overcome this financial difficulty. During this challenging time, Neil's father passed away, adding more pressure to the family. He had to sell assets for very low prices, yet still faced a substantial debt of $1 million. The ongoing crisis left them with almost no income, and they felt lost about what to do next. They were at risk of losing everything, and this situation seriously affected Neil's health. Then, doctors detected issues with Neil's thyroid gland, although tests only showed a slight hormone imbalance. The doctor chose not to address it immediately, hoping it would improve over time. However, his condition became much worse, particularly affecting his mental health. Shortly after Christmas 2009, he felt unwell, experiencing dizziness and weakness. On January 2, 2010, Frankie took him to the hospital, where doctors diagnosed him with depression and prescribed strong antidepressants, Zoloft and Cialis. After a second doctor visit, he was also prescribed the sedative Oxynax, but his condition did not improve, leading him to see a psychiatrist. During his first meeting with the new doctor, Neil reported frequent panic attacks related to the real estate market collapse. Although he had no obvious symptoms that required previously prescribed medications, he did show signs of anxiety. Instead of reducing or changing his medication, the doctor increased the dosage, which led to further deterioration of his condition and the emergence of alarming symptoms. Frankie told her sister, Neela, that Neil experienced periodic hallucinations and had trouble sleeping. He often behaved inappropriately, seemed disoriented, and felt lost. He was convinced that FBI agents were monitoring him because of his debts. He believed that he and Frankie would be imprisoned and that their children would be placed in foster care. All of his relatives knew that he wasn't being watched, but they couldn't convince him otherwise. He was truly paranoid. Neil became withdrawn, staying awake at night waiting for Frankie to wake up, and spent his days following her around, constantly talking about his fears. He couldn't handle the gaze of strangers, so he almost completely stopped going outside, fearing he was being pursued by the FBI. One notable incident that showed Neil's paranoia happened when Frankie managed to get him to go to the gym. She believed that exercise could improve his overall health, including his mental health. However, even before getting on the exercise bike, Neil's heart rate skyrocketed to 200 beats per minute due to his anxiety. This heart rate was dangerously high for his age, so they had to stop the workout to avoid risking his health. Neil's condition was deteriorating, yet he continued taking high doses of medication. About 3 weeks before the incident, he went out alone to enjoy the fresh air. Without waiting for his family, he got into his car and drove off. Luckily, he didn't get far. After driving for a while, he crashed into a barrier at an intersection. Disoriented, he exited the car and began acting inappropriately. A passing driver noticed his odd behavior and called 911 to alert the police. Then, the night January 22, 2010, Neil hid a gun on the top shelf of his bedroom closet. It was a Smith & Wesson revolver, next to an open box of .38 Winchester cartridges and a letter he had opened 3 days earlier. 3 rifles were also concealed in nearby drawers. A birthday party for Neil's twin sons, Joshua and Eric, was planned for January 23rd. Family and friends would gather for the party, play laser tag and take souvenir photos. Unfortunately, the children never arrived at this party as they were soon tragically shot. Around 6 a.m. on January 23, 2010, while everyone was still asleep, a tragedy unfolded, just hours before the party. Neil woke up, retrieved a gun from the closet, and his wife Frankie heard the noise. Frankie was half awake, not understanding what was happening in the next room, so she called her husband, Neil, and asked him what he was doing. Neil emerged from the dressing room holding a gun and pointed it at Frankie's, 53 years old. He told her that it was over and there was no other way. Terrified, she pleaded with him not to do it, insisting that she wanted to live, and asked about their children. Neil persistently told her that there was no other solution and that they all needed to go to another world. She couldn't believe what she was hearing. Realizing he was serious, she rushed at him, in an attempt to take the gun from him to protect herself and their children. A life-and-death struggle broke out between them, and they fell to the floor. Frankie fought with all her strength to take the gun and save herself and the children, but her efforts were in vain. Neil was stronger. He managed to wrest the gun from her grasp and shot her twice in the face, killing she instantly. During the struggle, she suffered several injuries, including a knocked-out front tooth and cuts on her fingers. Then, Neil reloaded the gun, put more bullets in his pocket, and went to the children's room at the other end of the house. First, Neil went to Eric's room, where his son was still sleeping soundly and didn't hear the gunshots. Neil, without hesitation, raised the gun and aimed it at his son's head. He shot Eric twice in the face, causing blood to splatter up to the ceiling and cover the surrounding walls. Although Eric did not die immediately, but the boy began to moan and choke on his own blood. Neil then pressed a pillow to his son's face and fired 2 more shots. At this time, the boy showed no signs of life, and Neil concluded it was over. He reloaded the weapon and went to Joshua's room. Like Eric, Joshua was still fast asleep and did not hear a thing. Neil placed a pillow on Joshua's right cheek and shot him twice in the face. The boy didn't react. Neil checked to ensure the boy was dead, then he leaving the room. He returned to the bedroom, past Frankie's body, and went into the bathroom to wash the blood off his face and hands. Afterward, he took his car keys and attempted to rouse his deceased family members, telling each of them to come on quickly and adding that if they didn't get up, he would have to leave without them. Of course, none of them responded. The ambulance arrived at the scene. Neil was covered in blood, but only suffered minor injuries from the accident that occurred earlier. The officers attempted to speak with he. During a brief and unclear conversation, he repeatedly tried to find his gun and acted suspiciously. The police confiscated the gun and continued questioning him. During the conversation, he confessed to killing his family. He was detained until the incident could be clarified. The detectives quickly began their investigation. They went to the Jacobson family home in Wellington, Florida, near Palm Beach, to verify his statement, where they discovered a horrific scene: 3 bodies inside the house. The crime scene was undisturbed, with bodies in various locations throughout the home. There was a lot of blood, and all 3 family members were dead. Forensic experts started examining the house, while detectives interrogated Neil at the local police station, allowing them to piece together the incident of that terrible morning. During his conversations with detectives, Neil frequently referred to his suicide note. In this 5-page typewritten letter, he detailed the reasons for his planned murder and end his life. He wrote that he could no longer live like this. Everything in their lives was spiraling out of control. He felt it was necessary to kill his entire family and himself to prevent them from suffering due to his poor business decisions. The letter also revealed that he intended to visit his mother and kill her. This was confirmed when police searched his car and found the keys to his mother's house, which he had brought with him. He was heading towards her house when the accident occurred. The police thought Neil didn't mean to end his life. Instead, he lost control after taking medication and crashed. However, his mother disagreed, she believing he wasn't a threat. She blamed the bloody incident on January 23 on incorrect prescriptions from doctors, saying the medication was too strong and caused Neil to lose control of his actions. During questioning, Neil said on January 23, 2010, while his family was celebrating their children's birthdays, a special force arrested him. However, the two children Joshua and Eric did not survive to see their birthday party. This horrific case has shocked the entire town of Wellington. Many people close to the family and neighbors could not believe that Neil, a respected businessman, could do such a thing to his family. The defense argued that the murder was committed due to insanity, so Neil was sent for a psychiatric evaluation. While in prison, he met with psychiatrists multiple times. His mental state was very unstable. Sometimes he showed no emotions and seemed detached from reality, while other times he lost control and became hysterical, especially when he remembered his actions. In prison, doctors diagnosed him with deep depression and prescribed different medications. Initially, he seemed to improve, and his condition stabilized. However, after a few weeks, the psychiatrist stopped the treatment because his body reacted poorly to the medication. However, a subsequent examination revealed that, due to a medical error, Neil did not receive treatment for his main illness, hypothyroidism, related to the thyroid gland and hormonal balance. In this context, apathy, depression, and anxiety are very likely. It was determined that he was prescribed powerful psychotropic drugs without official justification. Not even a complete psychiatric examination was conducted. Furthermore, it was found that the doses of the prescribed medications he took could indeed cause the hallucinations and disorders that he experienced. Neil deeply loved his family. He and his wife were not only married but also best friends. He never did anything wrong with his wife and children and was devoted to them. However, he was severely impacted by the financial crisis, leg problems, and his father's death, and his treatment was ineffective. Neil claimed that he wasn't the one who harmed his family. During the 3 weeks he was on medication, he changed significantly, sleeping only 2 hours a day. One day, the medication had a severe effect on Neil's, making his brain feel like it was burning. That morning, he woke up hearing voices in his head commanding him. Initially, he resisted, but the voices became louder and more persistent. He genuinely believed that killing his entire family was the only way to protect them from the FBI. Prosecutors are asking for the sentence of death under Florida law. However, many of Neil's relatives, including his lawyer, opposed such a severe punishment. They supported Neil, noting that before the tragic incident, he had never been cruel. Although he appeared worried and stressed about financial matters, but his family did not believe he was capable of such a violent act. The defense argued that a medical error led to the wrong treatment, and they demanded that the doctors be held accountable for the tragedy. The Palm Beach prosecutor mentioned that 2 copies of a suicide note had been discovered in the Jacobson family home. The note expressed love for the family and expressed feeling overwhelmed by their current circumstances. It stated that due to his short-sightedness, he had placed the family in a position of losing everything they had built. He admitted to participating in the real estate investment craze and felt confused about his actions. The note conveyed his desire not to leave his family in poverty and his inability to let them live in such conditions. He admitted that anxiety was consuming him and expressed shame. The first note was dated January 20th, and the second January 23rd, the same day as the triple homicide. This is considered evidence to classify the murder as premeditated, showing that he had planned his actions. Despite acting impulsively, but he admitted to having brought weapons home in advance and hiding them in the dressing room. Frankie was unaware of the presence of a pistol in the house and had no knowledge of the tragic incident that were to occur that morning. Neil had a clear memory of all the incident and was able to describe them in detail. A few days before the incident, Neil's mother visited him. During her visit, Neil repeatedly hugged her and said her that he loved her no matter what happened. This behavior raised doubts about his mental state. Despite this, the Franke family viewed Neil as a coward and cruel man for allowing evil to take control and lead to the death of his entire family. The defense argued that Neil's inappropriate behavior, such as waking up and immediately rushing to the weapon closet, suggested a mental disorder. They claimed he was influenced by voices and experienced a breakdown due to medication. Friends and relatives confirmed these claims. Subsequently, an independent psychiatric examination diagnosed Neil with bipolar disorder type 2 and several other serious mental issues. These findings led to him being deemed insane at the time of the crime. Nonetheless, the lawyers believed the jury would not accept this insanity defense and advised Neil to negotiate a plea deal with the prosecution. To avoid the death penalty, Neil agreed to a deal. Consequently, in February 2012, he pleaded guilty to murdering 3 people. His death penalty was replaced with 3 life sentences without the possibility of parole. Initially, he was under special supervision by prison guards, which is common in cases with a high risk of end his life. Neil attempted to end his life 3 times, feeling he had nothing left to live for, but each time he was saved. As part of the plea bargain, his relatives are allowed to visit him twice a year. In prison, he works as a clerk in the library, helping prisoners choose books and find information. Fellow prisoners say that Neil cries every day in his cell when he is alone, regretting his actions. Before the verdict, he often stated that he was indifferent to the death penalty and even expected it as a form of release. For someone who was once a loving husband and father, living with this overwhelming guilt is unbearable. This year, his wife Franke would have turned 78, and their children Eric and Joshua would have been 32. Instead, they will forever remain 53 and 7, buried together in one grave. Hello again, true crime fans. We've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Hannah Payne. On the evening of May 7, 2019, a major traffic jam occurred on the road near Hartsfield-Jackson International Airport in Atlanta, Georgia. At the same time, a truck carrying batteries caught fire on nearby I-285, causing several access points to be closed. This caused frustration and anger among many motorists. Terry Robinson, a correctional officer in Georgia who was off duty, was driving on Clark Howell Highway when he saw a red pickup truck run a red light. The truck nearly collided with a black SUV before crashing straight into a semi-truck. The semi-truck driver, Stanley Kimball, managed to escape his cab without injury, as did the SUV driver, Hannah Payne, who was unhurt and pulled over to the side of the road. Terry and 21-year-old Hannah both called 911 to report the accident. After the crash, Kenneth's pickup truck began to smoke from a fuel leak, and he initially appeared uninjured. He got out of the truck and walked around it, presumably trying to assess the damage. After waiting 20 minutes without seeing the police arrive, Terry became concerned about Kenneth's actions. Despite the significant damage to his truck, Kenneth was able to start it and drive away from the scene. Terry then asked Hannah to take a photo of Kenneth's truck's license plate. Hannah Payne, the young driver of the SUV, quickly got behind the wheel and pursued Kenneth. While driving, she called 911 again to report that the man involved in the accident might be drunk. She mentioned her intention to catch up with him to take a picture of his license plate. The police urged her to stop the chase and put her safety first, but Hannah was determined to follow him. She caught up with Kenneth and gave the police his car details. Despite this, she continued the chase, telling the police that she could not let a drunk driver cause another accident and refused to return to the scene of the original accident. Hannah then parked her SUV on the street at the intersection of Forest Peak and Road, about a mile from the accident site. After stopping the car, Hannah got out and walked toward Kenneth's pickup truck. She approached the driver's side door while recording their conversation on her phone. During their argument, her phone fell to the ground. In a moment of extreme tension, Hannah pulled out her registered handgun and shot Kenneth. She then picked up the phone and called 911 again, claiming that Kenneth pulled the trigger while she was holding the gun. She asked the police to come quickly. Police Ritchie of the Clayton County Sheriff's Department arrived on the scene and heard bystanders shouting that a woman next to an SUV had just shot a man during an argument. Hannah's black shirt was torn, and she changed into a pink hoodie while waiting for police. She quickly handed her gun to the police while they attempted to pull Kenneth out of the car and administer first aid. Hannah began talking to witnesses to their fight, hoping they would stay and tell police that Kenneth had attacked her and opened fire. Kenneth was rushed to hospital by ambulance, but sadly he could not be saved. Meanwhile, Hannah was placed in the back seat of a police car. Police then began investigating the incident on the busy rush hour road. Many witnesses saw what happened from different angles, and they provided the police with the information they needed. Hannah was quick to share her account of how the shot was fired. Hannah had been working in property management since graduating high school. Her job involved leasing properties, showing them to potential tenants, and collecting rent. In this role, she frequently met with strangers, sometimes in vacant buildings, and often handled large amounts of cash. This was her rationale for carrying a gun. In Georgia, residents can obtain a permit to carry a firearm only at the age of 21, which Hannah was at the time of the incident. Kenneth was 62 years old when he was killed. The truck he was driving belonged to his father. And inside, police discovered various tools and items he used as a mechanic. Police also found a set of needles and syringes for injecting insulin, which was crucial since witness accounts suggested he might have had diabetes or was experiencing insulin shock. The Clayton County Medical Examiner could not determine Kenneth's blood sugar level at the time of the accident because it naturally decreases after death. However, key witness Terry Robinson, who worked at a state medical facility, told the police that Kenneth was acting like a diabetic. Terry did not think Kenneth was drunk, but was convinced that Kenneth was diabetic and needed urgent medical attention. Kenneth's wife, Christine, later supported this diagnosis, saying she believed he had suffered an acute diabetic attack and may have been trying to drive himself to Southern Regional Medical Center when the accident occurred. She asserted that her husband would not have simply left the scene and was actually trying to get to the hospital. A few hours after the incident, Hannah spoke with police from Clayton County. She recounted the accident on Clark Hole Highway that led her to chase the suspect. Hannah explained that she had approached Kenneth to persuade him to go back to the scene of the accident, following the instructions from the 911 dispatcher. When he crossed into oncoming traffic to turn right, she saw a chance to make him stop. Hannah mentioned that she walked towards him while holding her cell phone, telling him she was currently on the line with police. At that moment, her phone fell to the ground. He then grabbed her shirt and ripped it off. Kenneth said he had something for her, which scared Hannah. In response, she pulled out a gun and threatened him. This made the situation worse, and at one point Kenneth tried to knock the gun out of her hand, leading to a struggle. Hannah reported that the gun moved, sometimes pointing the barrel at her and sometimes at Kenneth. Then, a shot was fired. Hannah told the police that she did not remember whether she had her finger on the trigger during the struggle and continued to insist that it was Kenneth who fired the shot. The gun had a double safety feature. First, the user needed to squeeze the handle to activate a switch on top of the weapon, and only then could they put their finger on the trigger to fire. Hannah mentioned that she didn't put her finger on the trigger because she was aware of how the safety worked. She believes that during the struggle, the gun may have spun, allowing anyone to release the safety catch and pull the trigger. Tiana McKinney, a witness, was driving a coworker home at the time. They saw Hannah's SUV. After noticing that the SUV had cut off Kenneth's pickup truck in the opposite lane, leading to a heated argument. She called 911. Tiana's account contradicts Hannah's story. She said that Hannah cut off Kenneth's truck, then Hannah got out of her SUV, pulled out a gun, and threatened him. Tiana wasn't the only one who noticed Hannah was the attacker. Cameron Williams captured a short video of the confrontation between Hannah and Kenneth. The video shows Hannah holding the gun, walking away from her car, and then bending down to the ground. Cameron thought that Hannah was bending down to pick up her dropped phone at that moment. Clayton County Police documented her injuries. After questioning her, they discovered scratches on the back of Hannah's neck where she said Kenneth grabbed her and pulled her forward. There was also a red, swollen area on her right wrist where Kenneth allegedly grabbed her. Hannah also mentioned a bruise on her lip, and her hand also appeared to be injured. While waiting for the police at the station, Hannah nervously bit her fingernails, claiming that they had broken during the struggle. When the police searched the car, they found several items that could support Hannah's claim that Kenneth had reached for a weapon inside. Among the clutter in the car, they found a flashlight and, most notably, a knife. However, only Hannah accused Kenneth of trying to get something to harm her, raising doubts about the reliability of her testimony. As a result, an arrest warrant was issued for Hannah Payne, which includes charges of murder, aggravated assault, and false imprisonment for Hannah stopping Kenneth's truck and pointing a gun at it. She also faces a charge of possession of a weapon during the commission of a crime, which could result in a life sentence with an additional 10 years in prison. Hannah's attorney, Matt Tucker, described Hannah as a good and responsible citizen. He argued that she pulled the gun to protect her life. Furthermore, he said that the state intentionally altered 911 recordings from the incident to remove portions of the audio that could support Hannah's testimony. Hannah was eventually granted bail and placed under house arrest, where she wore an ankle monitor and had a curfew of 9 p.m. Her release on bail upset the Kenneth family and many others who believed her actions were racially motivated. The case received widespread media coverage because it involved a white woman who shot a black man and was granted bail twice. Hannah's family later gave an interview, criticizing how the media portrayed her as someone very different from who she truly is. Hannah's parents expressed their condolences to the family of the Kenneth, while emphasizing that Hannah is a kind person who treats everyone equally, without regard for race or other differences. Hannah's trial was postponed first to 2020 and then to 2021. Even after 3 years, the trial has yet to take place. Kenneth's brother, Keith, contacted an organization that addresses issues of racism, seeking support. In his letter, he described Hannah as a cold-blooded criminal who refused to provide timely medical help to his brother, leading to his death. The accusation quickly went viral on social media. By spring 2022, Hannah remained under house arrest, and her trial date had not been established. During this time, the NAACP released a statement expressing deep concern about the slow progress of the case and urged for a quick resolution. A trial date was eventually scheduled for later that year. But the case experienced an unusual delay when defense attorney Matt Tucker did not show up in court. The judge remarked that this was not the first time she had issues with this lawyer, so she canceled the hearing and announced her intention to file a complaint against him with the Bar Association. Matt Tucker later informed the court that he was unable to attend the hearing due to having suffered a stroke and being hospitalized. In December 2023, nearly 4 years after Kenneth's murder, the much-anticipated hearing finally occurred. Clayton County Prosecutor Bonnie Smith presented evidence about the day of the shooting. Witnesses who were present at the scene also shared their accounts of that day. Since the incident unfolded rapidly, their testimonies varied and sometimes conflicted. One witness claimed that Hannah drew a gun as soon as she exited her car, while others asserted she only did so after she and Kenneth had already begun arguing. Despite these inconsistencies, the witnesses agreed on key details. describing Hannah's approach to Kenneth's car as aggressive and noting that they witnessed her striking Kenneth. Hannah's claim of self-defense would not have been valid if the jury determined that she was the attacker and did not attempt to defuse the situation. Medical experts concluded that Kenneth died from a single gunshot wound to the abdomen, with no other injuries to the body. During the trial, Hannah defended herself by explaining that she believed she was following proper procedure when Terry Robinson, the main witness to the first incident, asked her to take a photo of Kenneth's license plate. Terry stated that he did not instruct Hannah to follow Kenneth. However, Hannah reported that she observed Terry waving his hand at her multiple times, as if signaling her to follow Kenneth's car and photograph his license plates. Witnesses described Hannah's driving as aggressive, noting that she nearly collided with another vehicle during the pursuit and created a dangerous situation by stopping in front of a red pickup truck. After the incident, Hannah shared with the jury a story similar to what she told the police. She said that when she approached Kenneth to ask him to return to the scene of the original accident, he grabbed her and refused to let go. She emphasized that the moment Kenneth hit the gas and crashed into her car, she felt extremely scared. The prosecution asked why Hannah ignored police instructions to stop chasing Kenneth and return to the scene of the original accident. Hannah replied that she could not remember that moment because it had happened 4 years ago. The prosecution reiterated that the Kenneth did not know Hannah and was not obliged to follow her directives. After reviewing all the evidence, the jury took about 2 hours to deliberate and subsequently found Hannah Payne guilty of all charges, including premeditated murder. Hannah was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 43 years. Hello again, true crime fans. We've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Nicole Pitts. Nicole Pitts was born in late February 1973 and grew up in King County. She attended Eastern Washington College. Every summer, her family traveled to Seattle and spent much of their time at Lake Samash. Nicole had a close relationship with her mother, Gail, and had a good relationship with her father, Rod. In the 1990s, while working at a fitness club, she met her future husband, David. Their relationship quickly developed into a romantic relationship. After spending some time together, they married in 2002 in Maui, Hawaii. In 2005, the couple bought a condominium in Linwood, Washington, a place where they could enjoy their time together. At that time, Linwood was a quiet town with a population of fewer than 40,000 people. It featured narrow streets and many bars and restaurants, similar to their previous home. The young family quickly fell in love with the area. Nicole was outgoing and made friends easily. Within days of moving in, she had made many new friends. She is an animal lover and often walks her dog around the neighborhood or relaxes at home with her 2 cats. She cares for them as if they were her own children. Nicole's career was going well. After finishing school, she worked at a fitness club for a while, before becoming a corporate manager at a mobile phone company. She lived close to where she worked. Nicole was an important member of the team because she easily connected with her colleagues and helped them solve problems. However, she faced challenges from an early age. She was introduced to alcohol as a teenager and eventually became an alcoholic. This started when her parents divorced, which left her feeling lost. Her mother, a flight attendant, was often away on business trips, so Nicole was often left in the care of her elderly grandmother, which led to her hanging out with the wrong crowd. Fortunately, Nicole's parents noticed their daughter's issue early on, and with the support of her family, she was able to overcome her bad habit. They attended Alcoholics Anonymous meetings together, where she received guidance, making her journey easier. However, her alcohol use had lasting effects, resulting in significant health problems. At age 21, Nicole was diagnosed with endometriosis and underwent 3 surgeries. Following these procedures, she was prescribed pain medication to control her chronic pain. By 2006, 32-year-old Nicole had been avoiding alcohol for 8 years. Despite this, she remained an active and valuable member of her Alcoholics Anonymous group. She attended every meeting, viewing them not just as a way to manage her own recovery, but also as an opportunity to support others in their struggles. Nicole understood the challenges of the fight against addiction. From a young age, she had a passion for cooking, which only grew stronger over time. She loved preparing a variety of dishes and often brought her homemade meals to work for her husband, David, who always appreciated her efforts. Nicole was very close to her mother and called her every day. In early 2006, she was excited about her upcoming 33rd birthday. However, just 2 days before her birthday, she unexpectedly missed an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting in nearby Renton, surprising everyone. That night, David returned home late from work and went straight to bed, thinking Nicole would still be home. However, the next morning, he discovered that she had left, and he never saw her again. David tried calling Nicole to check on her, but she didn't answer his calls. He was worried that she might be upset because he hadn't spoken to her at dinner the night before and had gone to bed early from exhaustion. Despite his attempts to contact her, Nicole remained silent, which made him even more worried. He also contacted some of her friends and her mother, but no one had seen her. That evening, when David returned home and Nicole had not returned, he became alarmed. Worried, he decided to go to the sheriff's office, but was told that there was not enough time to classify her as missing. However, David convinced the police to investigate her whereabouts, as her behavior was very unusual, and he feared that something might have happened to her. Police arrived at David's home and discovered that, in addition to Nicole, her 2003 Volkswagen Jetta was also missing. Nicole had left for work that morning, but was gone. Her mother became concerned about Nicole's disappearance, especially since she had not received any calls from her daughter all day, which worried her. After police confirmed that no one had seen Nicole since she went missing, they began searching for her that same day. The family of the Nicole booked flights to Washington, hoping for the best and wanting to assist in finding their daughter as quickly as possible. Everyone was confused because Nicole was known to be reliable and responsible. She would never have vanished or ignored calls. Even if she couldn't answer right away, she would have called back soon. As her silence continued, her parents and husband grew increasingly worried. Those involved in the search for Nicole sprang into action immediately. Nicole's mother and stepfather went straight to the police upon arriving in the city. Members of the Alcoholics Anonymous Club, who cared deeply for Nicole and wanted to support her family, also joined the search efforts. The club was significant to Nicole, as she never missed a meeting and was set to receive an award for 8 years of sobriety, which she took great pride in. There was no reason for her to leave or abandon everything. Nicole's voicemail was filled with calls from friends and family, but none of them had been able to reach her. Some were concerned that Nicole might have relapsed, despite successfully battling her addiction for years. The police were actively searching for her, searching the surrounding areas of Linwood, but they found nothing. Meanwhile, Nicole's parents took action by creating a website to gather information about Nicole. Many people responded to the family's call for help, but most of the messages were just well wishes, and the little information they received turned out to be false. The search seemed to stall until a new event changed the course of the investigation. On February 7, a local resident was jogging near a wooded area of San Francisco Park, near a small lake. He accidentally discovered a strange object under a raspberry bush. Curious, he approached and was horrified to discover the body of a girl. A nearby witness quickly called the police. The police arrived in time, and acquaintances recognized the body as Nicole's. Forensic experts later confirmed that there was no evidence of rape. After the autopsy in the laboratory, it was proven that the Nicole had received multiple injuries during the beating, but the cause of death was asphyxia. The Nicole had multiple blunt force injuries on her legs, torso, and head, indicating a brutal murder driven by personal hatred. This raised the question, who could have done this? Nicole had no known enemies. The case was changed from a disappearance to a murder investigation. The news of her death was devastating for David and parents. News of her death devastated David and her parents. Police began investigating her bank card transactions to trace her final movements. They discovered that her card was last used on January 30 in a nearby town where she had paid for gas. Police requested video footage from the gas station, suspecting that the killer may have made the purchase instead of Nicole and hoping to identify him in the footage. While police wait for surveillance camera footage, they continue to search for Nicole's car, as it may contain important information for the case. Police reviewed Nicole's identity and social connections, but still found no clues. Nicole was known as one of the friendliest members of her work group and club. She had no enemies. Instead, she was a devoted friend, a loving wife, a caring daughter, and a skilled employee who loved her pets. Nicole even turned her own struggle with alcohol into a positive by supporting others who were trying to get sober, setting an example for them. While the police were searching for the car, her relatives and friends shared information about the missing car and Nicole's situation. They publicly appealed for help, urging people to be aware of the car and avoid touching it. Flyers were distributed that stressed the importance of calling the police immediately if the car was discovered, as the car was linked to Nicole's murder. This prompted local residents to pay attention to Nicole's car. On February 21, 2006, her car was discovered parked near the university. Police quickly seized the car for forensic analysis, hoping to gather evidence to arrest the perpetrator and piece together the events surrounding the tragedy. Inside the car, they discovered a large amount of trash and various items, including books and sports equipment. Police discovered that after Nicole went missing, someone had used her ID and credit cards. Police are investigating the possibility that Nicole's car may have broken down on the way and she was picked up by a stranger and harmed, and the location of her car was unusual because Nicole was supposed to be traveling to another city. The position of the car seat suggested that it had been driven by someone much larger and taller than her. In the lab, experts meticulously measured the seat position to gather clues about a potential suspect. They found DNA evidence inside the car, including hair and a single fingerprint. Police collected DNA and checked. Several patrol officers searched the area where the car was found. They asked anyone nearby if they had seen Nicole's car or who had parked it, but this did not yield any useful information. The police discovered that the car had been parked in the lot since February 10, as an illegal parking ticket from that date was stuck to the windshield. Unfortunately, there were no surveillance cameras available to assist in the investigation. Forensic tests showed that all traces of DNA in her car belonged to Nicole and David. The investigation yielded no new information to solve the case. By early April, there had been no progress. Nicole's parents had offered a $10,000 reward for any information that could lead to the arrest of the perpetrator. During this time, Nicole's mother, Gail, made frequent appearances on various television channels to raise awareness of the case. After a while, Nicole's family had to return to Arizona to work, but they kept in touch with the police who were handling the investigation. Nicole's father, Rod, was heartbroken and frustrated that the investigation was taking so long. Despite their efforts, the investigation continued without any breakthroughs. In September, the case was handed over to an experienced police officer. The new police quickly requested a search warrant for the house of the Nicole, which had not been done before. He aimed to find clues among her belongings, particularly on Nicole's computer. Unfortunately, the house revealed no signs of a crime, no blood or other evidence. The computer also yielded no useful information. Police continued to interview witnesses and acquaintances of Nicole. One of them was Barbara, a friend who had met Nicole at an Alcoholics Anonymous club. They had planned to meet at a coffee shop the evening Nicole went missing, but she never showed up. At first, Barbara thought Nicole was just running late. Then Barbara tried calling Nicole several times that day, but Nicole did not answer any of her calls. During this time, the police still had no clues to the case. Meanwhile, Nicole's parents, Rob and Gail, were at their home in Arizona. Their grief did not subside for a year. Feeling desperate, they decided to hire a private investigator because they were puzzled by the inconsistencies in the case. Nicole had left the house without her wedding ring, which was very unusual for someone who was so proud of her marriage and who would never willingly remove such a meaningful symbol. A private investigator began his investigation, but no leads were found. Nicole's family then increased the reward for information about the criminal to $25,000. Organizations focused on fighting crime and finding missing persons contributed an additional $1,000. The community remained tense, knowing that a dangerous criminal was still at large, the perpetrator seemingly without a motive, suggesting that he could be a madman ready to strike at any time. The police then requested a search warrant for Nicole's computer, believing it might contain clues about the criminal. In October 2009, the private investigator hired by Nicole's parents was charged with fraud. He falsely claimed to have found evidence in the case, but said he needed money to handle it. Her parents gave him more money, but then the private investigator disappeared and took on another case. As a result, his license was revoked. Nicole's parents no longer have a private investigator and no leads on the identity of the killer. In 2011, 5 years after Nicole's death, the investigation was still ongoing, but no significant updates were made. On March 21, 2012, the final suspect was arrested and revealed to be Nicole's husband, David. By this time, police had enough evidence against him. He was held in custody with bail set at $1 million. The prosecutor noted that the case had progressed significantly due to new technologies that were previously unavailable, especially in the field of forensic science. Police found that David's account of the night before Nicole's disappearance did not seem convincing. Additionally, police noted that only David and Nicole's DNA and fingerprints were found in her car. If strangers had been in the car, their fingerprints would still be there because they had not been erased. If the criminal had tried to erase the fingerprints, there would have been no fingerprints left. The driver's seat was adjusted to fit David's size, and surveillance footage from a gas station captured a person resembling him. After Nicole went missing, he used her cell phone to make multiple calls from various locations around the city. Police believed he was trying to throw the investigation off track. However, modern tracking technology allowed them to pinpoint the exact location of the calls, proving that Nicole could not have been there at the time because she was dead. Notably, both Nicole's and her husband's phones worked in the same areas. Strangulation, the method of murder, usually indicates a personal connection between the killer and the victim. Evidence found at the crime scene indicated that the killer was someone close to Nicole. This is consistent with the fact that she was not sexually assaulted. The medical examiner determined Nicole's time of death. It was found that she was killed at night or early in the morning while still in bed. Her limbs were clean, with no signs of struggle. Forensic experts determined the time of death by examining Nicole's stomach contents. They found that the food Nicole had eaten the night before was still undigested, suggesting that she had been murdered before she got up to go to work the next morning. Although they appeared to be a loving couple, it was clear that this was just a cover, and there were multiple reasons behind the crime. At the time, the family was facing serious financial difficulties. David is quite the party animal. He enjoys drinking and smoking marijuana, which puts a dent in the family budget. Nicole spent a lot of time and effort dealing with her addiction and had been trying to stay sober for years. David was jealous of his wife's strength. He also had affairs, and during the investigation, it was discovered that he had had at least 4 affairs. His lifestyle meant that he often pressured his wife into having sex. He even tried to drug her at a club to convince her, but she refused. This made him angry. He often met women at clubs, which led to sexual encounters. Just days after Nicole went missing, he began seeking new relationships. By the time he was arrested, David had remarried and had a child. This was especially painful for Nicole's parents, as their daughter had always wanted children. But David had no interest in that. Furthermore, David quickly began collecting documents to claim Nicole's life insurance. After gathering all the information, David was called in for questioning. At the police station, he denied any involvement in the murder. When asked to take a lie detector test, he agreed, but the results showed that he had lied. He was eventually arrested and charged with murder, but David firmly denied any involvement in the crime. The trial started in September 2013, 7 years after Nicole passed away. Her family and friends gathered in the courthouse, hoping for justice. The defense lawyer for the David argued that Nicole's death was linked to her relapsed alcohol addiction and possibly a new addiction to prescription drugs. He pointed to an empty pill bottle found during a search of the bathroom as evidence of this. And the defense insisted that all the evidence against David was circumstantial and that the case was based on speculation. Nicole's parents testified in court that David did not participate in the search efforts, did not help distribute flyers, and only pretended to be upset. Nicole's mother explained that the medication in question was a prescription painkiller prescribed to her daughter to treat severe abdominal pain caused by her endometriosis, which had significantly improved her condition. Prosecutors were unable to prove intentional conduct, so David Pitts was charged with second-degree murder. David was sentenced to 18 years and 4 months in prison, the maximum sentence under state law. Welcome back, detectives. Let's dive into another horrible case. The case of Carrie Ann Jopek. Carrie Ann Jopek was born on August 17, 1968, in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, a large city with a population of over 500,000. Her parents, Carolyn and Robert, divorced when she was very young. Shortly after, her mother remarried a man named Frederick Toussaint. The family lived in downtown Milwaukee along with 2 daughters, the youngest of whom was named Maggie. Carrie grew up in a loving family and had a close relationship with Frederick, whom she considered her biological father. She did not know of her biological father's existence, as he did not communicate with her. Carrie was well educated and had everything she needed. She was friendly and kind, which helped her make many friends, including older teenagers. However, during her teenage years, Carrie's personality began to change, leading to conflicts with her mother and stepfather. When she discovered that Frederick was not her biological father, she became very angry with her parents. She often used this information against him in arguments. Some relatives described Carrie as stubborn, while others thought she was simply going through a challenging period in her life, especially since she was only 13 years old at the time. On March 15, 1982, Carrie was allowed by her parents to stay overnight at her friend Marcia's house. Since both girls were in 7th grade, they went to school together the next morning, March 16. However, because they were in different classes, they could only see each other at lunchtime. Carrie was upset because her teacher had reprimanded her for arguing with another student who had spilled paint on her. The teacher then contacted Carrie's parents to report Carrie's behavior and truancy. The teachers suggested that Carrie's mother pick her up after school to discuss her actions. However, Carrie's house was close enough to the school, so her mother allowed Carrie to walk home by herself. Carrie was upset. She knew her mother and stepfather would probably scold her, so she didn't want to go home. Her friend comforted her, and they parted ways after school. Although reluctant, Carrie had to go home because she lived only a few blocks from school. Normally, it would only take her 3 minutes to walk home, but that day, she never returned. It is important to note that the 1980s in America were generally a safe time. People trusted each other, and crime rates were low compared to today. Additionally, the incident occurred in a crowded area where everyone knew each other, so no one thought it was strange for a 13-year-old girl to walk home from school alone. Carrie did not come home. Carolyn waited for her at home and then went out to look for her. Carolyn thought that Carrie had stopped to visit a friend on the way home and would be back soon. It is important to note that they could not contact Carrie because cell phones had not yet been invented. As the night wore on, Carolyn grew increasingly concerned. She set out again to look for her daughter. First, she went to see Carrie's best friend, Robin, who lived across the street. Unfortunately, no one in Robin's house had seen or heard from Carrie since school ended. Next, Carolyn contacted Marsh, who had spent the night with Carrie. However, Marsh did not see Carrie after she left. Eager to help, Carrie's friends joined the search and began checking with neighbors and classmates who might have seen her after school. But no one had any information. By 11 p.m., a search party of local volunteers who knew the family was formed. Many neighbors, friends, and acquaintances took to the streets to patrol the area and ask questions. Unfortunately, they could not find any information about the Carrie. They decided to wait for Carrie until the next morning. On March 17, when the girl still had not returned home, Carolyn went to the police station to report her missing. By then, the Carrie had been missing for almost a day, prompting police to act quickly, as the situation could be serious. Initially, the primary theory was that Carrie had run away, as she was known to be a difficult teenager who sometimes skipped classes and often spent the night at friends' houses. Police thought that Carrie was simply spending time with friends. However, after interviewing all her friends, they realized this was not the case. None of them had seen Carrie after school, leading them to conclude that something must have happened to her on her way home. They then began questioning residents living along her route that day, but these inquiries yielded no useful information. None of the residents had seen Carrie or noticed anything unusual. The police discovered that Carrie had been upset with her family after learning that her stepfather was not her biological father. Police believed this revelation might have driven her to search for her biological father, whom she could have gone to see that day. By this time, a day had passed since Carrie left school, and there was still no news about her. The police located her biological father, Robert, who lived in a different area of Malak, hoping she might be with him. Unfortunately, when they contacted him, their hopes were dashed. Robert explained that he had been at work all day the previous day and had not seen Carrie. A thorough inspection was carried out at the house of the Carrie. Police searched through all her belongings for clues, but found nothing significant. Consequently, the search for the missing person continued. A day after her disappearance, there was still hope that the teenager was alive. However, the critical window for finding a missing person is 48 hours, after which the chances of a successful rescue decrease significantly. Therefore, the police needed to act quickly. During the investigation, the police focused on Johns, who lived just a few houses away from Carrie's family. John was 17 at the time and had developed a close relationship with Carrie. The police learned that he had a rebellious personality and a history of legal trouble, including convictions for petty theft and selling marijuana. Despite their 4-year age difference, John showed an interest in Carrie, which raised concerns. The police decided to investigate further and brought John in for questioning. John adamantly denied any involvement in Carrie's disappearance, claiming that he had not even seen her that day. The police were unable to gather any useful information during their questioning, and there was no solid evidence against John. As a result, he was released. The police then turned their attention to her stepfather, Frederick. In these cases, the perpetrator was often someone close to the victim, and cases involving stepfathers were not uncommon, which added to their interest in him. The police looked closely at her family, especially the relationship between Carrie and Frederick. They discovered that the two had recently been fighting, a change from their previous relationship. Frederick attributed the turmoil to Carrie's adolescence, believing that her hormones had made her more irritable and prone to anger over small matters. Despite this, he maintains that he would never harm her. An anonymous witness reported some details regarding her stepfather, Frederick. They mentioned that the day after Carrie went missing, Frederick poured a new concrete slab in the backyard. The witness suggested that this may have been Frederick's way of disposing of the body by burying it underneath the concrete slab. This information seems suspicious and should be investigated. The concrete slab was examined using ground-penetrating radar, and no suspicious voids were detected. When the area beneath the slab was excavated, it was found to be empty. The yard was well maintained, showing no signs of recent digging. The police decided to conduct a second round of questioning with the Carey's friends, focusing on the possibility that she might have run away with a boyfriend. Although Carey never mentioned having a boyfriend to her parents, the police speculated that she may have kept this relationship secret. However, her friends firmly denied this possibility, insisting that Carey was not in a relationship with anyone. The police tried to collect evidence, but it is important to note that forensic science in the 1980s was not as advanced as it is today. At that time, there was no DNA testing, trackable cell phones, cameras, or GPS technology. This made finding evidence more difficult. As a result, the police could not find any clues. Carey seemed to have disappeared without a trace. Lack of evidence then caused the case to stall. The police did not have a strong motive for Carey's abduction, nor could they find a suspect. To raise public awareness of their daughter's disappearance, Carey's parents turned to the media for help. They appealed to anyone with information about Carey to come forward, but still, no leads came. The investigation was stalled due to lack of evidence. More than a year later, on September 2, 1983, a mysterious body was found in the John family home. The contractor was repairing the back porch. He leveled the ground and dug up a significant amount of dirt. While doing so, he noticed a foul odor coming from a pile of disturbed dirt. Upon inspection, he discovered human remains. The contractor immediately called the police. Everyone believed the remains to be those of Carey. The body was then subjected to dental records analysis to determine the identity of the remains. All members of John's family were questioned. During his police interview, John denied any involvement and requested a lawyer. A year earlier, the police had lacked substantial evidence to charge or detain him, so they released him but continued to view him as a suspect. The remaining members of John's family have denied any involvement in the murder. The medical examiner investigated Carey's cause of death and discovered severe injuries to her head and neck. She had significant internal bleeding, with lacerations on her left side. These injuries suggested that she had been attacked by someone else, leading to the case being classified as a homicide. Unfortunately, the autopsy was unable to provide enough information to determine whether rape had occurred. Carey's body was found in her friend John's backyard, but this does not mean that he was responsible for her death or that he buried her there. Witnesses said that on the day she disappeared, there was a party at John's house. Police had to piece together the case from scratch, with few clues to follow. And so much time had passed since the party that it was difficult for those who were there to remember what happened. Several teenagers were interviewed about the party at John's house. Some claimed they were there but could not remember any details. Others said they had only heard about the party and were not actually there. John claimed he did not organize any events that day, and police found no evidence to contradict his statement. 4 days after Carey's body was discovered, police received a new lead. A witness identified Jose Ferreira, a 16-year-old boy who lived next door to Carey. He was seen in John's backyard when Carey's body was discovered, which raised some suspicion. The police decided to pursue the lead and invited Jose to the police station for questioning. Jose denied any involvement in Carey's death or disappearance. Jose knew her well and was friends with her, so he was very upset when he discovered her body in the backyard. He claimed that he did it to honor his old friend. Jose's story seemed credible. He was also questioned about a party at John's house on the day Carey went missing, but he said it never happened. The police had no evidence against Jose, so they had to release him after questioning. Friends described Jose as friendly and cheerful, and no one believed he would hurt Carey. They spent a lot of time together and were close friends. The investigation continued, but no leads were found. The case hit a dead end. It wasn't until 33 years after Carey's murder that the investigation made any progress. On October 11, 2015, a man contacted a journalist to confess to the murder. His name was Jose Ferreira. In addition to contacting the journalist, He called the hotline and admitted to killing 13-year-old Carrie Ann Jopek years earlier. He also confessed to his wife about the crime. Journalists and switchboard operators were stunned by his confession and immediately notified the police. At the same time, Jose's wife learned of his crimes and went to the nearest police station to report him. Jose was 50 years old at the time. The police reviewed the case file. Despite Jose's confession, the police were in no hurry to arrest him. 2 days after his telephone confession, Jose turned himself into the police station and gave a detailed account of the events of 33 years ago. His sudden actions and confession were because he believed it would prevent his wife from getting a divorce. This statement puzzled the police. Jose said that on the day of the incident, Carrie returned home from school. She noticed a party going on at John's house. She wanted to avoid going home where she would face punishment, so she decided to join the party. At the party, she met Jose and they engaged in conversation. Then they went down to the basement together to find some wine. On the way down to the basement, he kissed her and she agreed. As they walked down the stairs to the basement, Carrie suddenly changed her mind and said she wanted to leave. In a fit of rage, he pushed her, causing her to lose her balance and fall down the stairs, resulting in a broken neck. In a moment of loss of control, he raped her, not knowing that she had died from the fall. His actions were classified as sexual assault and use of force. He defended himself by claiming that he had loved Carrie. He felt offended by her decision to leave, but he insisted that he did not want her to die. He panicked and dismissed the incident as an accident. Jose feared going to jail and ruining his life. He seized the opportunity during a lively party when no one noticed his presence in the basement. He needed to dispose of the body quickly to avoid being seen. Jose hid the body, and when night fell, he took a shovel and dragged Carrie into the backyard. In the dark, he quietly dug a hole and buried her. He believed that his plan had gone smoothly and that no one had seen him. However, the police were baffled by his story. They found it hard to believe that at such a crowded party, no one had noticed them together, and no one had noticed him digging the hole and burying Carrie. The police suspected that Jose might have had an accomplice, but he adamantly denied that anyone else was involved. Carrie's family said that Jose often visited them and was present at the farewell and burial. Carrie's mother remembered that Jose had mentioned being haunted by Carrie's ghost, which surprised them, but they ignored it at the time. While this could have been a warning sign, no one thought that the killer could be one of the friendly people in the neighborhood. Jose later revealed that Carrie's spirit had haunted him for years, making it impossible for him to live a normal life. This ultimately contributed to his decision to confess to the crime to ease his conscience. During the trial, the prosecutor asked for Jose to be convicted of second-degree murder. The defense argued that the case was manslaughter. Initially, bail was set at $200,000, but Jose then began to recant his confession. The prosecution's case relied heavily on Jose's confession. It would have been difficult to convince the jury of his guilt without any evidence. Ultimately, the prosecution offered a plea deal. In March 2017, Jose Ferreira agreed to plead guilty to sexually assaulting Carrie, which reduced his prison sentence to 7 years. The final sentence was handed down 35 years after Carrie was murdered. In 2022, Jose was released from prison and moved to the nearby town of Glendale, Wisconsin. He was listed in a police database as a potential sex offender and placed on supervision. Carrie's family expressed outrage that the man who murdered and raped a 13-year-old girl was released after only 7 years. He now lives a quiet life, as if nothing had happened, and as if he had not taken an innocent life. Welcome back, detectives. Let's dive into another horrible case. The case of Sierra Halseth. Sierra was a sweet young girl who loved spending time with her father, taking lots of pictures together. However, she burned those pictures and ran away with her boyfriend. She later blamed her father for everything, claiming that he had abused her. But was her words true? If so, why had no one heard of them before? Here is the full story of Sierra Halseth. her sudden change in behavior, and the tragic death of Daniel Halseth. Daniel Halseth was born in January 1976. He earned his bachelor's degree in music from Western Oregon University, where he was known for his drumming skills. He then pursued a degree in business, with the goal of becoming a successful businessman, and he eventually achieved that goal. At the age of 20, he met Elizabeth, the youngest woman ever elected to the Nevada State Senate. They got married in March 2001, which led Daniel to move to Nevada. The couple had 3 children: Dana, Jordan, and Sierra. They settled in Las Vegas because Daniel found a job there, but the family was not happy for a long time. 10 years after their wedding, Daniel and Elizabeth divorced. In October 2011, Daniel was arrested after Elizabeth accused him of trying to force her to have sex, even though they were still legally married. A month later, he filed for divorce, accusing Elizabeth of cheating on him. Sierra's siblings were still young when their parents divorced, but the family's troubles continued. Daniel and Elizabeth both remarried quickly. Despite this, Daniel and his ex-wife Elizabeth maintained their relationship for the sake of their children and even maintained a joint bank account. However, due to the constant instability, Elizabeth began a custody battle that lasted until Sierra started high school. Eventually, Dana and Jordan moved in with Elizabeth, while Sierra stayed with Daniel. The father and daughter have a close bond, and Daniel often shares photos of him and Sierra having fun together on social media, showing his love for his youngest daughter. In June 2020, Sierra began dating 18-year-old Aaron Guerrero, who was 2 years her senior. Unlike typical high school relationships, their relationship progressed quickly. They began making alarming plans for the future, including robbing their parents and running away to California. Both sets of parents quickly noticed negative changes in Sierra and Aaron's behavior, fearing that the situation would worsen if the kids spent time together. Unfortunately, the parents' worries and concerns led the couple to make poor choices. By Christmas 2020, Aaron and Sierra's families decided that the young couple should stop dating, and they were officially banned from dating. While it may seem like Sierra and Aaron are following their parents' wishes, that is not the case. Sierra and Aaron quietly waited for the right moment to carry out their plan of revenge against their families. Their goal was to eliminate their parents who had hindered their relationship. On December 16, 2020, Sierra's father, Daniel, wrote a heartfelt post for her birthday, expressing his love for her. He shared that when he was 9 years old, he dreamed of having a big family and always wanted to be a great father. He expressed his happiness that he had fulfilled that dream, especially because he had Sierra. Little did he know that Sierra was plotting to kill him at the time. On April 3, 2021, Daniel shared an old video online of him and his daughter having fun together, saying that they were enjoying their time. 5 days later, Sierra ran away from home. That same day, another unusual thing happened. $1,300 was withdrawn from her parents' joint bank account without any notice. Elizabeth found this strange because Daniel would never withdraw such a large amount of money without informing her. Elizabeth sent Daniel a text message, but he did not respond all day. By this point, many people, including Elizabeth and his mother, Christina, were worried because Daniel had stopped answering his phone. Elizabeth then texted her daughter, Sierra, to ask how Daniel was doing. Surprisingly, Sierra replied that Daniel's phone was broken, but he was fine. However, Daniel's family grew increasingly concerned. They knew he could use his laptop to communicate, and if his phone was broken, he could fix it quickly. Daniel regularly posting videos on Instagram and sharing his thoughts on Twitter with many followers. His mother was aware of this, so his sudden silence was concerning to her. She asked a family friend to check if Daniel was at home. The family friend contacted Sierra to find out where her father was. Sierra replied that he was in the shower. The friend then asked why Daniel wasn't answering his phone. Sierra explained that her phone was broken. She assured the family friend that she would have her father call back from another phone as soon as he finished showering. However, that didn't happen, and the next day, Sierra stopped answering calls and texts. Christina's increasingly concerned when Sierra did not respond to her texts. Concerned, she decided to call her niece, but Sierra only said that her father was in the shower. In a fit of rage, Christina threatened to call the police, causing Sierra to stop answering her phone altogether. That day, surveillance footage showed Daniel's blue Nissan leaving the area, causing Christina to become even more concerned. She continued to call on Wednesday, debating whether to contact the police or have Peggy and Joey come over. Eventually, Sierra stopped answering her phone altogether. Meanwhile, Joey and Peggy, Daniel's landlords and close friends, were on their way, but they informed Christina that it would take a few hours for them to arrive because they were out of town. Christina was so worried that she decided to call 911 to report that her son, Daniel, had been missing for 2 days. Daniel had been absent from work, and friends and family had been unable to reach him. Christina noted that Daniel was not usually like this. He lived with his daughter, who was also not returning calls or texts. The most worrying detail was that money had been withdrawn from Daniel's account at 3 different ATMs. Police were then dispatched to the address, but Joe and Peggy had already arrived. When Joey and Peggy arrived at Daniel's house, they found the front door open and Daniel's car gone. They cautiously walked inside and immediately smelled a strong smell of smoke. They searched every room in the house, but found only the remains of a fire. There was no sign of Daniel. However, things took a turn for the worse when they entered the garage. In the middle of the garage, they saw a sleeping bag with something inside. Upon inspection, they discovered Daniel's body, burned beyond recognition. Joey quickly called the police and told them they were the homeowners. They had just arrived and discovered that a fire had broken out in the house 2 days earlier. Joey also mentioned that he had seen a body in a sleeping bag in the garage. A few minutes later, the police arrived at their address. During their investigation, they confirmed that Daniel, 45, had been brutally murdered. The forensic team discovered a significant amount of shocking evidence in Daniel's home. First, they found a chainsaw carelessly left on the living room floor. In the kitchen, there was another saw with blood smeared along its edge, and 2 knives were found in the sink. The police also located a receipt from a store and an ATM. Despite signs of a fire in the living room and the bloody saw in the kitchen, it was evident that someone had made serious efforts to clean the house. Daniel's autopsy revealed a gruesome scene. He had suffered 70 slash wounds. Most of these injuries were to his head, neck, and torso. His body, burned beyond recognition, was stuffed into a sleeping bag and moved to the garage. Police concluded that the person responsible for Daniel's death harbored intense hatred, as evidenced by the brutal stabbing and beating he endured. After he died, the attacker even burned his body in the living room. When the police spoke to the family, it was clear that there were no obvious suspects. No one could understand why Daniel had such a vicious enemy. However, Christina noted that Sierra had been acting very strangely. When asked about Daniel's situation, she always replied that her father was taking a shower. And then Sierra stopped contacting Christina completely. Additionally, Sierra had gone missing from the house. On April 9, police received a tip that led them to a receipt from a local store and access to surveillance camera footage. They discovered that Aaron had purchased a saw and gloves. That same day, Sierra was seen in the footage leaving the store with 2 bottles of bleach, using Daniel's credit card to make the purchase. Police quickly gathered information about Aaron. They learned that both families had forbidden Aaron and Sierra from seeing each other, so he ran away from home on April 8. With the addition of surveillance footage, police had enough evidence to issue arrest warrants for them. On April 13, police arrested Sierra and Aaron 400 miles from their home in Salt Lake City, Utah, for not paying their bus fare. When police conducted a background check, they discovered that the couple was wanted for murder. Additionally, police discovered Daniel's blue Nissan, the car Sierra and Aaron had used to get away. Inside the trunk, they found a bloody blanket. Police seized Sierra and Aaron's phones as evidence. They examined the contents and found a disturbing video on Sierra's phone. In the video, Sierra and Aaron talked about killing Daniel without showing any remorse. After Sierra and Aaron were arrested in Utah, they were taken to the Clark County Detention Center in Nevada. The investigation at the crime scene revealed that Sierra and Aaron intended to dismember Daniel, as a chainsaw and a handsaw were discovered in the house and had been recently purchased for that purpose. As a result, Sierra and Aaron face multiple charges, including murder, arson, conspiracy to commit robbery, and 4 counts of fraudulent use of a credit or debit card. On June 15, 2021, Sierra and Aaron pleaded not guilty at their initial hearing. The case has attracted attention, especially because Sierra seems to have no remorse for her actions against her father. Many were shocked by her seeming indifference. Sierra's defense said her parents' divorce and the long custody battle had a significant impact on Sierra. The therapist then explained that this type of trauma can significantly disrupt a child's development. If Sierra had previously experienced emotional trauma, any change or loss could have added to her feelings of despair. Daniel's family has stated that Sierra and Aaron's complete lack of remorse is reprehensible and inexcusable. They expect justice to be served in the most serious manner. They loved Daniel deeply and miss him. This will be their only statement. In May 2022, Sierra Halseth and Aaron Guerrero agreed to a plea deal. However, it is unclear whether the couple truly felt remorse or whether they agreed to the plea deal in exchange for a lighter sentence. The judge sentenced Sierra and Aaron to life in prison, with the possibility of parole after 22 years. This was part of the deal they made when they pleaded guilty to murder and other charges. After 22 years, they could be released around the age of 40, which would give them a chance to start over. After the verdict, Daniel's mother, Christina, spoke to the press, expressing her grief. Christina said that Sierra had shown no remorse for the murder she had committed. In fact, during the trial, Sierra tried to blame Daniel, claiming that she had been forced into the act. Sierra said that her father had assaulted her, pinned her down, and beat her. However, Christina pointed out that Sierra could have reported the incident to the police, but instead chose a different and more tragic course of action. In a surprising turn of events, Aaron was the only one to apologize for his actions. He sought forgiveness from Daniel's family, who noticed that Aaron showed remorse and emotion, unlike Sierra.